Okay. I want to thank you all for your patience. I'm so sorry that we're getting started a little late here. So this is the TUSD board meeting of Tuesday, June 14th. Thank you all for joining us. Can I go ahead and have a roll call to establish quorum, please?
Ms. Shaw.
Here.
Ms. Counts.
Here.
Ms. Luna Rose.
Here.
Dr. Ravi. Ms. Grijalva.
Here. So there are 4 present. Ms. Counts is joining us online, and Dr. Ravi should be joining us shortly. And so we have, can we turn on the screen so we can see if Rachel is here with us? Rachel, where are you?
Here I am.
There you are. Thank you so much for joining us. So I'm going to say a little bit of love. I'm going to say some lovely things about you. So just hold on for a moment. This is Rachel Rudder. She is an employee with Native American and working with Native American Student Services in TUSD. Rachel was born and raised in Tucson and is a TUSD legacy Catalina High School class of 2000. She attended the U of A, earning a Bachelor of Arts in History in 2004. Rachel completed her Master in Education in Elementary Education with distinction at NAU in 2008, earned a Master in Education in Educational Leadership with distinction at NAU in 2015. Rachel was a classroom teacher for 11 years and multi-tiered system support MTSS facilitator for 4 years. She is beginning her 2nd year as Native American Student Services Program Coordinator. Student advocacy is her passion. TUSD recognized Rachel as Classified Campus Support Employee of the Year in 2019, and she is currently pursuing her doctorate in education in organizational leadership at Grand Canyon University. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for all of your dedication to our students. I'm wondering if you would honor us by reading the Land Acknowledgement.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
On behalf of the Governing Board of the Tucson Unified School District, I, Rachel Rudder, acknowledge that the school buildings and facilities of the Tucson Unified School District reside on the ancestral homeland of the Tohono O'odham Nation and the federally recognized tribal land of the Buskoyaki tribe.
Thank you so much. And how is your summer going? Are you working through the summer?
It's going well. I am working through the summer. We have a lot of programs we're developing to roll out in August. And I will be taking a small vacation with my family, taking my daughters to Disneyland for the first time.
Oh my gosh, how exciting. Well,
Yes.
have a great time. I hope it's not
Thank
too
you.
crowded. I'll be there too at the end of June, fighting the
I'll
crowds as well.
wave.
Yay, it'll be fun. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and I appreciate all you do for the students in Tucson Unified.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. And now we're going to have the pledge read by Juliana Peña. There she is. Say hi, Juliana. Wave. Can you wave? Let's see. Oh, there she is. Just kidding. You look lovely. Thank you for joining us. You're entering the 3rd grade. You just finished 2nd grade at Johnson Primary K through 3. And if I can, I'll just read a little bit about you, and then please feel free to add anything you like. Juliana loves to read and draw. She likes to put things together with arts and crafts. Juliana is interested in learning more about Egyptology and loves to bake. She's a yellow belt in karate through Active Stars and is a proud rainbow maker. Thank you so much for joining us. What are you doing this summer?
Swim.
You're swimming? Excellent. Good. Well, are you ready to lead us in the pledge?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We will follow your lead. So if you just want to wait until the flag comes up, and then whenever you're ready, we're ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Juliana, and taking some of your summer to lead us in the pledge. We appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Have a good day. Enjoy the rest of your summer.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so Dr. Trujillo, we're on 2.4 agenda adjustments.
President Grijalva, no agenda adjustments to recommend this evening.
Okay, thank you. Now we're on Superintendent's report. And I do want to say that we have an interpreter available en Spanish. Tenemos un intérprete aquí que está aquí. Si necesitas ese servicio. ¿Hay alguien? Okay. And then I'll bring it up again, a call to the audience. Okay.
Yes, President Grijalva, members of the governing board, TUSD public, parents, community members, welcome to our first meeting officially of the summer here in June. And tonight got a couple of important items to share with our community. First and foremost, the budget. Central focus tonight. This is a budget that we are extremely proud of. The fiscal year 23 budget that our governing board will consider for adoption tonight features our board's $5.7 million investment and commitment to decompress wages across the district. The governing board also approved earlier on in the fall a $5.1 million, or I'm sorry, just recently this spring, $5.1 million salary and compensation package for all of our groups, continuing to move all of our employees forward on the salary schedule. Tonight's budget also features a $2 million investment and commitment to increase hourly rate wages for all of those mission-critical positions throughout the district where we are seeing pronounced vacancies due to the private sector taking some of our best and brightest. And also, we increase supplemental base pay for 301 for our teachers with this budget at $2,500 for the upcoming school year. And tonight, this budget also represents a $1 million commitment by this governing board as they approved $1 million of its budget towards employee benefits to minimize the impact of the continued rising costs of premiums and plans for our employees to keep those prices at a minimum from increasing. And on the capital side of the house, tonight's proposed budget features over $7 million that have been approved for deferred maintenance projects throughout the district. The categories of building systems, HVAC, grounds, curb appeal, special systems like electrical, plumbing, and security and roofing, and another $5 million for the long-awaited comprehensive renovation of bathrooms at some of the district's largest high schools. This is something that our students and our parents have been asking for many, many years. We're very, very excited that this budget features that commitment by this governing board. And tonight's proposal, because we know that this community asks every single year to what extent our budget puts dollars in the classroom. Tonight's projected instructional spending percentage for this proposed budget for fiscal year 23 is clocking in at 57%, which would be a 20-year high in terms of dollars in the classroom. We look forward to the governing board's discussion this evening. As all of us continue to mourn not only the tragedy in Texas and the loss of life in Texas, but the increased wave of gun violence across the country in public spaces and schools, we want to reiterate and recommunicate this administration and this governing board's commitment and prioritization of safety and security for every single child and young person, every single employee under our care. Our school safety team represents one of the best prepared, most well-organized, well-trained safety and security teams in the state of Arizona. It's a team of 34 school safety members along with 48 proud and dedicated crossing guards that carry out our mission of prioritizing student and staff safety. This evening, our school safety leadership, under the leadership of our director, Mr. Joseph Hallams, will be going over the safety protocols and the crisis and response readiness preparation that we ensure happens each and every single year to make sure that our campuses are safe. He'll also be reviewing our protocol for reviewing school threats when we receive them, the team that we assemble, the protocol that we follow, and the extent that we go to investigate each and every single threat. I think you'll find after viewing tonight's presentation, there is not a single threat that we assume is fake. We go to the full extent of investigative efforts, and we assume that each and every single threat is valid until our threat assessment protocol deems otherwise. Tonight, it's also an important step and looking at an administrative proposal this evening to help prioritize training and professional development at the campus level for all of our employees in the event of emergency and crisis response and readiness. We're also going to talk about a comprehensive needs assessment that will be going on this summer that will assess safety and security infrastructure on campuses and buildings throughout the district that will culminate in a capital proposal that we will bring back to the governing board a little bit later on this fall that will focus squarely on safety infrastructure. Features like fencing and gates and keyless entry systems and doors and windows and other infrastructure improvements. We're looking forward to bringing that to the governing board a little bit later on this fall. And lastly, just a preview of a more comprehensive presentation we will be facilitating at our next governing board meeting for our governing board and our community. This year was the very, very first year that students stopped taking the AZ Merit in English, Language Arts, and Math and started taking the new assessment, the Arizona Academic Skills Assessment in both English, Language Arts, and Math. A couple of items to note. Number one, school letter grades are not out yet. School letter grades are still being formulated, still being finalized according to ADE's formula. We will see that criteria next week at our presentation. However, we do have the results and how our students did in both English, Language Arts, and Math, and we've got some good news to share with the community. The community will receive, of course, a more detailed presentation next week, but here is a 30,000-foot overview. First year in the new AASA standardized test, we saw a very, very nice district bounce back from the COVID-19 online learning / hybrid learning last couple of years. Our greatest gains in proficiency were between 4 and 8% in English Language Arts when you compare us to students passing the test in 2020-2021. With regard to English Language Arts, our district third graders enjoyed the highest jump in ELA proficiency, improving 8% over their performance and proficiency over the previous school year, 2021. On the middle school side of the house, ELA was good news for us. Math, not so much. We'll talk about that in a moment. But on the ELA side of the house, 7th and 8th grade students enjoyed a very healthy 6 and 7% increase in proficiency as opposed to last year, 2021. For math, the district enjoyed its largest increases of all, whether it was ELA or math at the 3rd and 4th grade levels, with a whopping 10 or 11% improvement in math proficiency for 3rd and 4th graders over last year, 2021. And no secret here, 6th through 8th graders, we noticed the smallest increase in proficiency in math for 6th through 8th grade students, between 1 and 5%. We're looking forward to next week to share more details on a school-by-school, grade-level-by-grade level breakdown for the community on our first year back to 100% in-person learning and how our students did on the brand new state assessment, the Arizona Academic Skills Assessment results. And just a quick update for the governing board and the community on summer school enrollment. Summer school is in full swing. We have set a record with 11,166 students enrolled. You can see the breakdown there. Our largest enrollment, of course, is over 4,000 students in our K-5 programs. And, of course, rounding out the other end is our high school credit recovery focus at 3,000, or just over 3,600 students. We'll continue to keep the governing board and our community updated as summer school continues on for this summer school session. With that, Governing Board President Grijalva, that concludes the superintendent's report for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. Now we're on, does anyone have any questions? The superintendent's report? Okay, thank you. Call to the audience. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Clerk Luna Rose.
Thank you, President Grijalva. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. During the call to the audience, the board clerk will recognize speakers and maintain order by setting appropriate limitations. The governing board is committed to the safety of the entire TUSD community. The following procedures related to the call of the audience portion of the board meetings will be observed. All public comments for the meeting were accepted by either emailing or calling the board office to have names added to the list, or by emailing written comments to be read into the record by noon the day of the meeting. If public comments were sent in, they will be read into the record by the Program Coordinator of Staff Services to the Governing Board. Individuals addressing the board should observe rules of propriety and good conduct and refrain from impertinent or slanderous remarks. TUSD serves students from all ages, so speakers should be aware that children may be present or listening. Our staff will make sure each board member receives a copy of all written comments. At the conclusion of the call of the audience, the Governing Board President will ask if individual board members wish to respond to criticism made by those who have addressed the board, wish to ask staff to review a matter, or wish to ask that a matter be put on a future agenda. By law, at most 2 board members can address any single issue raised during call to the audience. And our first person who will speak this evening is Mr. Scott Thompson.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me address the board. I'm a school teacher at Gridley Middle School. I teach social studies. I've been with the district since 1993, and I was a campus monitor. That's my first job with the district. And I'd like to talk to you tonight about school safety. This is meant to be positive, not negative. And first thing, I personally would like to see more physical barriers to restrict someone from coming onto our campus to cause us harm. I've been at schools that have had bars over the windows, and I liked that. I felt just, that much more secure. I've worked with some terrific school resource officers over the years. I have not been on a campus with a school resource officer since about 2015, I want to say. I miss having that presence. We are fortunate enough to have some really terrific and highly capable TUSD school safety officers that are frequently on our campus. But as far as I know, they're not assigned there permanently. They have maybe 2 or 3 schools between them. So I like what I saw earlier during the superintendent's report about addressing school safety. And I would like to see that continue, maybe a little more collaboratively. However, I would like to see more physical barriers. That's all I have to say, and thank you for letting me address the school board. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Next person is Mr. Art Lopez. Mr. Lopez? Okay. Next letter to be read from Ms. Jennifer Sprung.
A TUSD active employee was shut off without notice from all TUSD access on the morning of May 26th. End of work contract for teachers is May 27th. TS was instructed in a personal directive from HR director to shut down immediately all digital access from employee Sprung. Various 1010 staff contacted to assist commented on action as very odd, highly unusual, a bit extreme, and have never seen this before. The action served to deny all workplace rights and to target and exclude one employee. This denied employee Sprung access to iVisions, pay stubs, W-2s, benefits, all frontline files, True North records, Outlook emails, SharePoint, and Teams, all access locked out. State law ARS 23-351 provides that an employee shall be furnished with written or electronic statements of earnings and withholdings. This statute has been violated by HR Director and TUSD. No other of the 7,000 plus employees, nor the 500 plus separating this year, suffered the same action. Only one, employee Sprung. For the record, this employee's TUSD personnel file is missing last 9 years of evaluations, positive references, and separation agreements. Punitive, yes. Ethical, no. Exclusionary, for sure. Appears to be retaliation for calls to the audience and whistleblower complaints disclosing policy noncompliance, possible fraud, and administration failure to exercise professional ethical obligations of school management. Employee was also physically blocked from attending one TUSD graduation, but told any other is okay. Board policy states no retaliation is permitted for reporting. Board needs to enforce policies as it appears the SUP is aware of and permits such behaviors. Stop the farce, demand answers and ethical actions. assure safe reporting to protect and correct from corrupt practices in TUSD. Respectfully submitted, Jennifer Sprung, 35 plus years TUSD employee.
All right, thank you. Next letter from Ms. Dolores De Vera.
I do not expect to be able to attend the meeting in person. I'm writing today about Agenda Item 611, in which you are being asked to approve using Maxim Healthcare for substitute teacher services. If you approve tonight's proposal, you would still have to individually approve any proposal to spend more than $250K, but administrators would be free to enter contracts for under $250K to hire subs from this outsourcing company. You need to say no to this proposal loud and clear. On September 23, 2021, when administrators tried to quietly slip a proposal onto the consent agenda to hire outsourced Maxim subs, you wisely said no. Then, on February 22, 2022, they slipped it on again, requesting teachers on special assignment, calling them subs only in discussion. Some of you suggested that the district ought to pay a gas stipend or to do something to get TUSD subs to go to Pfister and Valencia. Dr. Trujillo contended that the district needs to, quote, do both, unquote. But he never explained why we need to do both. You never made him explain what Maxim can do that it makes them more successful at getting subs willing to drive out to these schools. It's really very simple that what they do. Maxim pays more, a ton more. So in February, you approved a $175K contract to allow Maxim to hire just 5 subs for Valencia and Pfister for the remainder of the school year, just about 56 days. Do the math. You agreed to pay Maxim $625 per day per sub for 56 days. A TUSD sub is asked to do to do the job for either $145 or $160 per day, or maybe $175 per day if they are hired long-term. If Maxim gets $625 per day, what cut are they giving the sub? $200 a day? $300 a day? Whatever it is, you just need to pay the TUSD sub that amount to get them to go to those schools. But there is no need at all to pay Maxim. We know what ESI did when its exorbitant profit margins were outsourced. They turned around and handed Crystal Foster and Cam Wattis huge campaign contributions. Our retirement was taken away and handed straight to ESI, and then ESI handed a cut to board members. We subs won't forget that ever. So forgive us if we are suspicious of the eagerness administrators have to toss money over to Maxim. Dr. Trujillo said he would give you a proposal to improve compensation for TUSD subs going to these hard-to-fill schools. It seems irresponsible to me for you to approve more money for Maxim profiteers when you haven't received his proposal and you haven't even tried paying TUSD subs what Maxim pays. Say no to Maxim, the private profiteers. Pay your TUSD subs what it takes to get them to these schools. Dolores De Vera.
Thank you. Next in person is Ms. Virginia Bichet. And my apologies for not pronouncing correctly.
I'm reading this on behalf of my friend because you guys couldn't take 3 minutes out last meeting for one email. One. Who could see anything going wrong with a counselor starting up a drag show on school grounds at a school club? That would be many parents, including myself. Mr. Trujillo shamed a parent recently regarding a fight that broke out at Tucson High. If I had to side with anyone, it would be the parent. I know the bullying that happened to my kids when they were in TUSD. I went through so many channels to get each issue resolved. Nothing happened. It took for me to get the parents myself to resolve all those issues. It looks as if nothing has changed. The blame falls on Trujillo. He was quick to point the finger, but has yet to take responsibility for him failing to protect a child, or several that we don't know about yet, from being targeted by a sexual predator he employed. I've heard many complaints as I've listened to the board meetings over the past few years about the Human Resources Department. Maybe the staff is onto something. They don't hire quality people such as this counselor. They gave her access to minors and had her start a drag show club. No club endorsed by staff should be endorsed by staff or held on school grounds if it's something I would normally go to a bar to see. The schools are not 21 and over, so this club should have been shut down before it started. Many parents called or wrote in complaining about this, and you all still allowed it to happen. Now we have a 15-year-old that is a victim of sexual abuse. To make it worse, the student was living with this employee. Mr. Trujillo, will you take the blame tonight, or you will sweep it under the rug like normal? You should resign. That is the only reasonable option. You have a responsibility for each and every employee you hire in the district. I know the blame falls on you. It would just be nice for you to admit it. The only thing that separates you and the staff that thought this was okay from a pimp is that you didn't receive money for pimping these kids out, unless you count ARP funds. You exposed them to people they shouldn't have been exposed to at school. We pay taxes for the schools to teach. The funding isn't considered a covered charge to allow you to bring 21 and over material into a public school. You people are so fascinated with sexualizing every aspect of life. Let these kids be kids while they can. Acceptance begins within. They do not need anyone's approval. It looks like there is still no concern on your part, as there is an active Facebook page with these kids' bio, opening them to potential pedophiles to lure them in because they've said what they liked. And I can pass a copy out to anybody that wants it, or I can give you the website.
Thank you. Next is Ms. Stephanie Kirk. All right, Ms. Kirk. Okay. Next is a letter from Guadalupe Hedinger.
My name is Guadalupe Henninger. As we know, inflation is a global problem. This pandemic had a devastating effect on the supply lines in this country and all over the world. At the U.S. level, this new administration has signed an executive order to bolster supply chain. OPEC oil countries brought down the oil production when the world was in lockdown during the pandemic and refuses to increase the production to pre-pandemic levels. Instead, they keep rising prices to astronomical level. When gas prices are up, food prices go up too. The devastating and unlawful Russian invasion of Ukraine has exacerbated the problem. Russia is accused of stealing Ukraine grain and blocks supply chains, causing a global food crisis which could cause millions of deaths from hunger. What OPEC and Russia are doing is a crime against humanity. This new administration is working hard, funding and rebuilding the institutions that keep our food, water, and air clean. These institutions were dismantled by the previous administration. We need to bring the Build Back Better Act to improve the lives of we the people. So we, instead of getting mad at TUSD for raising food prices, we need to call our U.S. Senators and U.S. House of Representatives, the U.S. Senators who want to protect people's lives and people's voting rights, and the people's welfare only have 51 votes, and they need 60 to make people's lives better in this midterm election. We need to elect the ones who want to protect we the people and vote out the ones who protect corporated donors. At the state level, we call on to Congress and U.S. Attorney General to investigate the restriction of people's constitutional voting rights. Sincerely, Guadalupe Henninger.
Thank you. And President Grijalva, that concludes this evening's comments.
Okay, thank you. Any board members wish to respond to a criticism as to wish to have staff review a matter or wish to ask that a matter be put on a future agenda? Dr. Ravi.
Sure. I'm not going to sit silent as people are scapegoating drag shows and using them to equate to child abuse and other things. I was at that drag show with my 3 children. It was safe. It was friendly for all audiences of all ages. And for you to be there scapegoating good people and denigrating good people because they're dressing in drag and having fun and expressing themselves is really sad and pathetic, because these are safe environments. These are appropriate for all ages. There was nothing there that was inappropriate. And you can continue to hate on communities, minority communities, LGBTQ communities, but our community here in Tucson is not going to stand for that. And I'm proud to be here in Tucson, where we know that we can't just be scapegoating LGBTQ people and events like that and denigrating folks from my community. And I just need to speak out, because that is not appropriate.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi. Dr. Trujillo, did you wish to respond to anything? We need to get you another mic.
I need to leave it on. In response to the call to the audience regarding the potential governing board approval of Maxim, we will make sure and address the need for Maxim this school year. I do want to respond by stating that currently we have 56 exceptional education teacher vacancies. Maxim is one of many vendors that fills a temporary need until those positions can be filled permanently. We, of course, will give more detail as that action, potential action, is on later tonight.
Thank you.
Ms. Grijalva?
Yes, Ms. Counts.
I just want to stand with Dr. Shaw and his comments tonight against the hatred and bigotry against a very, this is, again, go back to what we know. This is my specialty. What is developmentally appropriate age expression of our students. So I just wanted to back Dr. Ravi up and condemn that kind of hatred that we heard tonight at the call to the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Counts. Okay. Ms. Shaw.
Thank you. I also want to stand in solidarity with Dr. Shaw in his comments tonight. Art is an expression, and I think that's what the students were doing on that night, and there was nothing evil or wrong about it. Also, I want to thank Mr. Thompson and Ms. De Vera for writing into us today. And Ms. De Vera, I definitely support your stance on not having Maxim for this next school year. So thank you for bringing that to our attention again.
Thank you.
Ms. Grijalva?
Yes, Ms. Luna Rose.
I'd also like to thank Mr. Thompson for coming. I know sometimes some of the staff may feel a little nervous coming up and speaking in front of the superintendent and other administrators, but I really appreciate his comments and that we will be having a very good and in-depth discussion later this evening. And I know technically it's not part of the rules, but I also stand with Dr. Ravi. Hate has no home in TUSD.
Thank you. Thank you for that comment, and that would be a unanimous support of your comments, Dr. Ravi. The other issue that I wanted to bring up, because it was said publicly, Ms. De Vera made a comment about ESI and contributions to former board members. There was a complete and total investigation of that. It was completely dismissed, and those comments are slanderous and actionable. Thanks. Okay. Dr. Trujillo.
It's a very sad and heartbreaking call to the audience. If you're a TUSD student or employee and you're watching this, I guarantee you that you will be protected, you will be safe, and you will be valued. As a public body, our governing board members are required to be here at this dais and to facilitate a call to the audience. But you as our students, our family members, and our employees are not. We will continue to prioritize your inclusion, celebration of who you are, and your place, your wonderful place in our district.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. Okay. Appreciate that. Now we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Dr. Trujillo.
President Grijalva, members of the governing board, I'd like to present the consent agenda as noted on this agenda as presented, items 5.2 to 5.23.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Shaw?
Thank you, Ms. Grijalva. Yeah, I was wondering if we can pull item 517, just so we could have an individual presentation on that one specific item.
Okay. Did you want to move the rest of the agenda?
Yes, I'll move
The rest of the consent? Okay.
Oh, Dr. Shaw has.
Oh, I'm sorry. Dr. Ravi. Okay. So we have 5.8 and 5.17. Okay. Ms. Shaw, did you want to go ahead and move the rest? I'm sorry.
Yes, I'll move the consent agenda.
I'll
Excluding those
second.
two? Okay. And Ms. Lunaro, second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Item passes unanimously. Now we're on 5.8. Dr. Ravi.
Thank you, President Grijalva. So I had some questions for administration that we never get a chance to address, and wanted to make sure, this is really important, making sure we have the right consultant for our benefits plans is going to make a huge difference for our employees in the years to come in terms of making sure we have the best plans negotiated, making sure we have the best premiums figured out, and we're making sure that we're working with Employees Benefits Trust effectively. So, the questions I had, making sure this wasn't just a financial decision, understand better how this was vetted by the EBT, since I wasn't able to attend the meetings through my conflict, even though I'm the board liaison to the meetings. So making sure before I voted in support of the change in the contractee for our consultant for our benefits plans, that I understood better, where this came from in terms of the change.
Thank you, Dr. Shaw. I'd like to welcome Renee Heuser to the podium to talk about the process, the factors, the considerations that led to the EBTB recommendation here this evening. Ms. Heuser.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. I brought Diana Kerfit from purchasing as well. What this was the end of a contract, and so at the end of a contract, we typically go out and RFP for a new vendor, and we did that this year. A committee is put together. The EBT, Employee Benefits Trust Board Chairman Martin Ansfeld, participated on that RFP committee. I'm going to leave the specifics to Diana. I believe there were 5 vendors who responded.
Good evening, Governing Board. Yes, the RFP was posted to AZ Purchasing, our bid board. It was sent to 107 vendors. We received 5 responses and 7 no bids. After the initial review of the proposals, the committee met and considered the responses responsive and responsible. The submitted proposals were reviewed by the committee, comprised of district employees and a member of the trust board. They are recommending that where am I at? That the award is recommended to Valley Schools.
Sorry about that. So yes, it was vetted thoroughly. The committee was very comfortable with the decision to make that recommendation forward to the EBT, to the Employee Benefits Trust Board, and in fact did not even go to a round 2 for best and final because they were very confident. Valley Schools has worked with us for several years. The Employee Benefits Trust is familiar with the actuarial work that they do for our plans, and so they were very comfortable moving that forward to you all.
Any other questions, Dr. Ravi?
I don't have any questions. I'm happy to move the item then.
Okay, I'll second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Item passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. Item 5.17, approval of the resolution requesting the Arizona School Facilities Oversight Board for reduction of square footage. Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, President Grijalva. I just had a few questions and was wondering if staff could give us some more information. This item is in regards to reconfiguring academic spaces to district administrative spaces. And some of those, it's at Menlo Park, Joyce Drake Middle School, and Pace Alternative High School. And I'm just curious as to why this is being done, what's in these spaces currently, and what administrative departments will take over these spaces. Specifically, I'm curious about Menlo Park because there's 11 rooms that seem to be in the process of being reconfigured, and I know the Family Resource Center utilizes a lot of the spaces there, so just wondering what's going on with this item. Thank you.
Welcome. Sorry, this is my first time doing this. Sean Brown.
There you go, Sean. Sean's a longtime team member out of Planning Service. Good to see you, Sean.
Good.
Welcome.
Saying hi to Dr. Trujillo and to the governing board members. Thank you. Basically, what's occurring with this is we're trying to reassess all of the sites. And so what's going on is these sites were closed, but then they were used for admin staff. So what's going on is the state wants to know how these are being used. And without approval from the board, they're going to leave it the way it is existing. And the reason why they're going to admin, because now they're being used for admin space compared to use for actually students. So that's the rationale behind this process.
Okay, so the rooms that are requested to be reconfigured, they're just empty rooms at these different locations?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Welcome.
And so I'll move the item.
Okay.
I'll second.
Thank you. I have a motion to second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes unanimously. Thank you. Now we're on item 6.1, Administrative Appointment, Assistant Superintendent of Leadership and Student Success. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, President Grijalva, members of the governing board, tonight marks a long-awaited, unprecedented investment in leadership development in this district. And in a year where approximately 1/4 of the district's principals will be brand new, and in many of the 20 schools and 21 schools where we will see new principals taking the helm in July, we also have several schools that not only will have a brand new assistant principal, but will also have a brand new principal, but will also have a brand new assistant principal, meaning a whole new administrative team coming in. This could either be a tremendous opportunity, or it could be tremendously detrimental to campus climate, to culture and morale, if we don't provide the appropriate support to new leaders coming in to the Tucson Unified System. With so many leaders coming in, we've also depleted our administrative ranks at the assistant principal level, as so many assistant principals have now stepped into principalship roles through this unprecedented opportunity of 21 leadership changes throughout the district. The vitality of any organization, the life of any organization, the success of any organization is wholly dependent upon its commitment to developing leaders, to creating more leaders, to step up and take the baton of leadership when leadership passes to them. And tonight's proposal contends that this position will do just that. And so we're very, very proud tonight for the governing board to consider the Assistant Superintendent of Leadership and Student Success that will be squarely focused on making sure that our new principals are supported, given the tools and resources necessary to be nothing less than great in their new position, strengthen the pipeline, recruit teacher leaders that are interested in administration, and provide that guidance, training, and professional development to our assistant principal ranks to get them ready for the principalship. And tonight our recommended candidate is one of the most highly respected high school principals in all of Southern Arizona, throughout TUSD, and one of our premier administrative leaders. He has taken leadership roles throughout his tenure here in TUSD, serving on numerous committees, a vital part of our district leadership team as he works in his current role as president of Eli. He is the longest serving high school principal that we have here in TUSD, one of the longest serving we have in Pima County. And he has been proudly at the helm of Cholla High School since 2009, where he has steered that school to new heights of academic success and excellence. You name it, they've got it. IB, CTE, amazing AP programs for every kid, expanding opportunities for Buskoyaki kids. Throughout his tenure, we'd like to recommend tonight Mr. Frank Armenta for this position of Assistant Superintendent for leadership and student success.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. I'll move the item.
I'll second.
We have several that want a second. I'll go ahead and let Ms. Count second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes unanimously. Congratulations, Mr. Armenta.
Thank you.
Did you want to come up and say a few words?
Good evening, salam alaikum, Yosin Chanevu. Good evening, Dr. Trujillo, Board President, Grijalva, Clerk Luna Rose, and board members. I want to thank you all, along with Dr. Trujillo, for this opportunity to join his team. I look forward at contributing to his team working closely with new principals, aspiring principals, and anyone that wants to be a leader in our district. I want to thank the Choya students, faculty, support staff for preparing me for this new journey. I want to thank my Eli colleagues as well as my TEA colleagues who have supported me in this last year and a half. I also finally want to just thank my wife, who can't be here today. I know that she's listening. She's a big supporter and fan of mine. Y para mi mamá también, yo sé que es muy orgulloso que las cosas que estamos haciendo aquí en este distrito, y I want to thank her for my life and also the creator. One last comment to Board Member Shaw. I want you to acknowledge you, and I want to thank you for knowing that I come from the neighborhood that I came from, and that vote meant a lot to me. And I will continue to represent our neighborhood like it should be. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations. Felicidades. Okay. And we're on 6.2, Administrative Appointment, Interim Principal, Miller Elementary.
All the members of the board, as we celebrate current Principal Carranza and her leadership opportunity at Roskridge, that of course creates another leadership opportunity, an amazing learning community out there at Miller Elementary. Tonight we want to welcome a former Miller Elementary leader home, where she proudly served as the MTSS facilitator from 2018 to 21. She left us for a little bit to go be an assistant principal, but has found her way back. And we know that the staff there is very, very excited to welcome tonight's recommendation, potentially back as its interim principal. Lindsay Aragon is our recommendation this evening.
Thank you. Board members, I'll move the item.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second by Dr. Ravi. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes unanimously. Congratulations. Come on up. Welcome back.
Thank you. I'm a little bit shorter than Mr. Armenta, sorry. Dr. Trujillo, President Grijalva Board, thank you so much for this opportunity to come back and serve the Miller community. I am beyond excited when this opportunity came available, super excited for Maricela, but happy for myself. And I look forward to serving the Miller community. It feels like coming home. So to the Miller community, I'm so happy to be back. I can't wait to be with you, and it's a great day to be a Miller Mustang. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. 6.3, Administrative Appointment, Assistant Principal, Catalina High School. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, governing board members, tonight's recommendation for the assistant principalship over at Catalina High School comes to us from Catalina High School, where she currently serves as the testing coordinator. She also served as the science department chair, an avid site team member, and curriculum service provider, a variety of leadership roles on that campus, which make her intimately familiar with the needs of the campus and the relationships that are necessary to launch a brand new administration under the leadership of Dr. Norma Gonzalez. So tonight, we honor Dr. Gonzalez's recommendation and the Catalina community's recommendation. Dr. Kelly Bristow is our recommendation for assistant principal at Catalina High School.
Okay, thank you. I'll move the item.
I'll second.
I have a motion, and Ms. Luna Rose seconds. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes unanimously. Congratulations.
Dr. Trujillo, President Grijalva, members of the board, thank you for this opportunity to serve the Catalina community and to continue the work of the late Miss Alyssa Hall in curriculum and instruction at Catalina. I'm so excited to continue working with Dr. Norma Gonzalez, John Arroyo, and the entire Catalina staff. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Item 6.4, Administrative Appointment, Assistant Principal, McGee Middle School.
Yes, governing board, members of the public, and tonight we support Principal Muick, who has some large shoes to fill with the departure of Assistant Principal Angela Scavoni as she takes the helm over at Kellen. Tonight, his recommendation and the McGee community's recommendation is a native of New Mexico, the land of enchantment, where she served proudly Albuquerque Public Schools for many years as an administrator, both at the dean and the assistant principal position, and most recently serving all the way across the country in Bennington, Vermont, where she serves as the assistant principal at Molly Stark Elementary School. Looking to come across the country to the old Pueblo, we would like to recommend this evening Kristen Siemens Thompson as the assistant principal recommendation over at McGee Middle School.
Okay, thank you. I'll move the item.
I'll second.
I move the item. Ms. Luna Rose seconds. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes unanimously. Congratulations.
Ms. Grijalva, Ms.
Yes.
Siemens couldn't be here today, so she's en route to Tucson, and she sent this message. It is with great enthusiasm that I am returning to Tucson and am delighted to serve the community. I love Tucson as Saguaro Cougar and could never imagine returning as a McGee Roadrunner. Thank you for the opportunity to continue my journey in this noble profession we all strive to serve.
Thank you. That's nice. 6.5, Administrative Appointment, Assistant Principal, Utterback Middle Magnet School. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, governing board members. This is not something we see very often because usually when warriors take root at Pueblo, they just don't leave unless there's like an amazing opportunity. So, and it is an amazing opportunity to go proudly serve over there at Utterback. So this makes sense. So tonight's recommendation proudly serves as dean at Pueblo High School. Prior to that, served over at Alicevale Middle School as a PE teacher. So tonight's recommendation, we would like to recommend Ricky Valdez to serve as the next assistant principal at Utterback Middle School.
Thank you. Board members, I'll move the item.
I'll second.
I move the item. Ms. Luna Rose seconds. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes unanimously. Congratulations.
Thank you, governing board members, Superintendent Trujillo. Thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity. I'd like to take a brief moment to thank my beautiful wife, Melissa, who's here supporting me as she always does. Also like to thank the Pueblo community for welcoming me and embracing me with open arms and preparing me for this next step in my journey. And last but not least, I'd like to thank Mrs. Sanders and the Utterback community for believing in me and giving me this opportunity. And I look forward to rolling up my sleeves and getting to work at Utterback. Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Now we're at 6.6, Administrative Appointment, Assistant Principal, Ross Scrooge, Bilingual Magnet, K-8.
Yes, President Grijalva, board members, for Ross Scrooge, K-8, we are proud to recommend this evening a brand new assistant principal to go along with its brand new proud principal, brand new administration out there. And tonight's recommendation currently serves as curriculum service provider at Pister Middle School. Also served some previous 2 years from 2018 to 2020, proudly serving the Booth-Fickett community as a curriculum service provider with some experience as a testing coordinator. So a lot of well-rounded campus leadership, quasi-administrative work tonight. First step into the journey of administration. And we'd like to proudly recommend that Claudia Perez serve as the assistant principal for Ross Scrooge K-8.
Okay, thank you. I'll move the item.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second by Ms. Luna Rose. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes unanimously. Congratulations.
Of course, I have to move the mic a little bit. This morning I heard a quote, and it was, "Do what you love to do it with passion, and success is inevitable." May we continue to educate our kids with passion, love, and experience, and patience. It is my pleasure and honor to join TUSD's amazing team of administrators. I am excited and committed to assist in leading Roscrouch Bilingual towards achieving the goals that together we will set. I am here because of my faith, my family, and former administrators who shaped me and helped me along the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations. Okay, now we're on 6.7, administrative appointment, interim assistant principal, Hollinger K-8. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, President Grijalva, members of the governing board, we are very, very excited about the new leader coming into the Hollinger K-8 community. But our new leader needs an assistant principal, and we are proud tonight to recommend one of our most outstanding magnet coordinators from Davis, Davis Bilingual, which is one of our premier magnet schools of America winner, and she has been a big part of that school's success. She is a tireless advocate for two-way dual language access, programming, and quality in this district, and she's going to take that two-way dual language expertise into her first administrative assignment. So tonight we'd like to recommend Catherine Arnquist Burke to serve as the interim assistant principal at Hollinger K-8.
Okay, thank you. I'll move the item.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion, a second by Ms. Luna Rose. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes unanimously. Congratulations.
Thank you, Board President Grijalva, board members, and Superintendent Trujillo for this opportunity to serve the TUSD community. Thank you also to all of my colleagues, students, families who have all taught me so much. Dejaré un parte de mi corazón en Davis con las familias y el staff que les tengo mucho cariño. But I'm looking forward to this awesome family at Hollinger and working together to create the best experience for each faculty member and student. Sí se puede.
Sí se puede. Felicidades. Okay. So, Dr. Trujillo, we usually do a picture, so I'm thinking maybe we could go outside to take the picture.
I would recommend,
enough
as
light?
the COVID level of transmission has hit medium, that we do the outdoor picture.
Okay, so we're just going to take a real quick 5-minute break, and all of our new administrators, if you can meet us outside, we're going to take a quick picture. Thanks.
Dr. Walby. Here. Miss Luna Rose. Here. Miss Shaw. Here. Miss Halva board members, Dr. Trujillo, Council Ross. I am here tonight to give you a brief update on where we're at with meals, and then of course get to the unfortunate proposal of increasing our prices. Since COVID started, we have been operating under the last 2 years with waivers that have been granted by USDA to provide free meals to all children. The recently passed omnibus appropriations bill by Congress did not include language to extend those waivers. So as of now, the waivers that we've been operating on since March of 2020 do expire at the end of this month on June 30th. There was a bill introduced in the Senate, but there has not been any traction on that. So at this point, as of June 30th, we resume to pre-pandemic meal operations. Just a brief little background of the meal program. So we are a federally funded reimbursement program, the National School Lunch and Breakfast Program. So what that means is we get reimbursement per meal served, and our meal reimbursement varies if the meal is a free student, a reduced student, or a paid student for the meals that we serve. Just to give you a little insight, because we did get additional reimbursement during COVID due to the conditions that we were providing meals under, supply chain, food cost increases, those kind of things. USDA was giving us more reimbursement. What we're looking at is a decrease in 81 cents per lunch meal and 26 cents per breakfast meal for next year based on the current reimbursement rates. So for school year 22-23, as I mentioned, we'll resume pre-pandemic. Those waivers expire. The great news for TUSD is that 60 of our schools do qualify for what's called Community Eligibility Provision, CEP. So what that means is we have a high percentage of students at those 60 schools that automatically qualify for free meals by receiving SNAP benefits. So the good news is at 60 of our schools, nothing will change. Those students will continue to receive free meals next year. The meal prices do not affect 60 of our schools. For 27 of them, they don't qualify for CEP based on the percentage of students at those schools. It's not high enough to qualify them. So we're looking at the impact of these meal prices on the 27 schools. So for a paid meal, just to give you a little kind of insight, we receive currently reimbursement rates do come out July 1 for the coming school year, so we don't know what they're going to be, but currently we would be getting 33 cents for a breakfast meal served and 44 cents at lunch. So what that means for any district is your meal prices that you set for students that don't qualify for free or reduced and have to do what we call a full pay meal. Your price charge does need to cover your cost, obviously. So our food cost, labor cost, operational cost. When you add that with the 33 cents at breakfast, 44 at lunch, we need to ensure that we are covering our costs. So our current meal prices, and again, this would only apply to the 27 non-CEP schools. Currently, breakfast is $1.25 for K-5, $1.50 for middle and high. Lunch is $2.30 at K-5 and $2.80 at middle and high school. Sorry about that. Okay, so the proposed meal prices that I'm bringing forward to you this evening for next school year, again, at the 27 non-CEP schools, we're looking at a 25-cent increase at breakfast at both K-5 and middle and high school, and then a 20-cent increase for lunch. Why am I proposing the meal price increases? Of course, I certainly would like to not have to do so, but we are being faced with pretty tremendous increase in our food costs, as well as increase in our labor costs. With changes to our minimum wage positions and all of our positions in the district, which is a great thing, but that does affect what our operational costs are. We have not increased our lunch meal prices since school year 2017-18, and breakfast has not actually been increased since 2008-2009. I do want to mention here on this slide, just to give you a little bit more insight on the 25-cent increase at breakfast and 20 cents at lunch. If a student that doesn't qualify for free or reduced at these 27 schools were to eat breakfast and lunch every day for the entire school year, that equates to a $44 increase at breakfast and $35.20 increase for lunch for the whole school year. If they ate breakfast and lunch every day, we're looking at a $79.20 increase for the entire school year for that family to participate in the meal program. To break it down a little further, the 27 non-CEP schools, we currently have 9,711 students that do not qualify for free or reduced meals. So the impact of the proposed meal price increase would potentially impact 9,711 students. And historically, our paid students have a very low participation level in our meal program. Historically, typically only 18% of them participate in lunch and 3% at breakfast. So if you break that 9,700 down to the 18% participating in lunch every day and 3% at breakfast, it's 1,748 students impacting potentially based on historical participation levels at lunch and 291 students at breakfast. I did want to provide to you a comparison of our surrounding districts just so you could see kind of where our meal prices fall in comparison to others in our community. As you can see, they're pretty similar. In speaking to the food service directors at all of these districts in our community, they've all communicated to me that they were planning on having to bring forward increases to their governing board as well to consider, just because of the state that we are operating in with food costs and labor costs primarily. So I'm not going to walk through each of these prices, but I did want to provide that so you could see where we're at as far as our prices are not out of line with others. So again, what I am bringing forward to request this evening is a proposed breakfast increase to $1.50 for K-5 and lunch $2.50, middle and high school $1.75 for breakfast and $3 at lunch. Now, as we return to pre-pandemic operations, I do want to just remind you of our district meal charge policy, which does impact the 9,711 students that qualify for paid meals, and it does also affect our reduced student category. But this is a requirement of the National School Lunch Program that districts do have to outline through a governing board policy what our policy is if a student does not have funds available on their meal account. So this went into effect actually just before COVID. So this was passed, I believe it was December or January, and then COVID hit in March of 2020. But for grades K through 8, we offer a 2-meal charge on the account if a student doesn't have funds available. And then after that, we provide an alternate meal that's charged to the meal account. The alternate meal at breakfast is a bagel, fruit, and milk, and the alternate meal at lunch is grilled cheese, fruit, vegetable, and milk. For high schools, if funds are not available, an alternate option of a cheese stick and fruit is charged to the account. Obviously, not the full price charge. They're only charged 50 cents to cover the food cost of that cheese stick and fruit. We came to these alternative meal options through a pretty in-depth community discussions that I did at the time. I went out to different school communities, talked to students, parents, high school students, administrators to try to get feedback on what they thought was, a recommendation and something that would be acceptable to provide, because we do have to offer an alternate meal. We do obviously very aggressively communicate to families to try to bring to their attention that they have a balance on their account through emails, phone calls, and letters. But the bottom line with this meal charge policy is the students are being fed and they are getting something to eat. But as you might recall, we were on trajectory to be at close to $1 million of negative meal accounts prior to implementing a policy when we previously allowed charges to just be as there was no limit. Any questions for me?
So you said that currently 9,000 students would potentially be affected by the increase. And I know that every school has a different sort of system on how to try to encourage students to fill out the application for free and reduced lunch. I know that we really try to push that. And so my hope is that every campus is going to do their best to set up, a couple laptops the first few days of school in case parents have a hard time trying to find the application. It's pretty easy if you know how to navigate and where to look, but if you don't, it's kind of a little overwhelming. And my hope would be that those students that qualify would be able to get access to that. And I'm wondering how it would impact our budget if we had more students participating in the meal program. Would it, I mean, I know the cost would be increased, but so would the reimbursement, right?
Yeah, so obviously, yeah, we would be generating additional revenue. The more meals that we serve, again, revenue is a loose term, right? Because we're
Correct,
just,
yeah.
we're not operating with a huge carry forward, because that's just not the reality of a food service operation. But yes, the more participation in our meal program, then yes, we would be serving more meals, and our reimbursement that we receive is higher. So yeah, we would definitely continue our marketing and promotion of the meal program, especially now that we're starting with 60 of our schools on CEP. We haven't actually operated a full school year with all 60 operating. We only had 34 prior to COVID, and then we were ready to launch that following school year 2021, and that didn't happen. We ended up being able to provide free meals to everyone.
Right, and that was the only other question I had. If those schools have an increase in the number of applications that qualify, then they might be able to move into.
Exactly. They could potentially be for next school year, for the following school year. We look at the numbers every April.
Okay.
And then we submit to ADE by June 30th, any new schools that would qualify for the coming year. So absolutely there is potential. And we do expect, of that 9,711, I do expect more to potentially qualify, because a lot of families haven't been filling out an application, right? Because it's been free for 2 years.
Yeah, so I have Dr. Ravi and Ms. Luna Rose.
Thank you, President Grijalva, and thank you for the presentation and for all the thought that I know went into this proposal that we'll be vetting tonight. So I want to make sure I understand exactly who's affected by this, not just the number of students, but in terms of like family income levels. And I have two questions. So if a family is getting reduced price lunch and breakfasts, they won't be affected by this price increase at all if it were
They will
passed?
not. Reduced prices are set at 40 cents lunch, 25 at breakfast, and that's
Okay,
set
that's
by the
set, and that
federal.
won't be affected at all by this proposal. The only people that are affected, assuming that those who qualify fill out the form and then are either free or reduced, only families that don't qualify are those that make above a certain income threshold.
Correct.
And so there was a chart that was sent out when I was asking more about who this affects. And so if I'm reading the chart correctly, so a family of four making $50,000 a year qualifies for reduced lunch. It's a $51,338 and
That's
above that doesn't qualify for free or for the reduced lunch piece. And so that's the threshold. A family of five, I see like 60,000. So that's the threshold. So we're talking about this will only affect families of four if they have two children, two parents making over $51,000 are the only ones affected by this, or a family of a single parent and two children, a family of three making over $43,000 or so a year. And these are only people that are affected.
Correct. That is correct. And those income guidelines are set at the federal level based on the income poverty guidelines that come out every July. So it's 130% of the federal income poverty to qualify for free and 185% of reduced. And that's where that chart comes into play.
Okay.
They use those guidelines and apply that 130% or 185 to get your household size and the annual income.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Luna Rose and then Ms. Counts.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Grijalva. Ms. Aguilar, or actually Dr. Trujillo, this may be more directed towards you. What, if any, because last couple of weeks I have been contacted by parents about free lunch and the lunch program, like the summer lunch program ends June 30th. I've been getting a lot of questions. I even got a question tonight from a parent. So what does it look like, and maybe this is pie in the sky, in terms of like extra money in our budget that can cover what looks, for the upcoming school year, instead of asking everybody to fill out these forms? And I understand we get the money. I mean, I do it as a parent, even though I'm privileged enough to be able not to have to do that. But what does that look like?
So I asked Director Aguilar to be prepared tonight for the overall cost. If we were to say the 79-cent increase and the district were to move to subsidize or pick up that increase in our general budget, making assumptions that all 9,000 students that are affected would eat. So I'd like to turn it over to you,
Sure,
Ms. Aguilar,
Absolutely.
to go over the numbers.
Yeah, if we took that $79.20 increase and left, that's the increase I'm proposing tonight. If we were to not increase the prices and have the district cover that increase, if all 9,711 students ate breakfast and lunch for the entire school year, that equates to $769,000 to provide, to just cover that increase. So we keep our prices where they're at, and the district is covering the meal price increase of the 20-cent increase at lunch and 25 at breakfast. So that would be assuming all students eat everyday breakfast and lunch. If we apply historical participation levels of our paid student category, that's 18% at lunch and 3% at breakfast. That brings that number down to around $75,000, but you also have to assume we typically see a 15% increase when meals are free. So that would be the lowest amount that I would estimate, $74,000, all the way up to the $770,000. But again, if the meals are free, we typically see more students participating. And that's just covering the cost increase, not for the entire meal, if they were to stay at the current prices.
Okay. And do we have a cost for the entire meal?
So the entire meal would be the 9,711 times 176 days times the 230 or 280 for lunch. So it's a pretty hefty amount for a.
Thank you. Ms. Counts?
Yeah, I hate to admit, but I was one of the probably late parents to register my kids for next year. But I was pleasantly surprised to go through the process online through Parent View this year and found the whole process to be so much easier to sign up for free and reduced lunch. It's a lot more clear than it used to be when we had, paper and pencil. It feels a lot more private, anonymous, and immediate, and it's really clearly laid out. So whoever did that on our website, kudos to you, because it's really clearly laid out what your family size is, what your annual income is, and if you qualify. So it's just a quick yes or no box that you check versus, like before with the pencil and paper and like interview questions. And it was just, it felt a lot, it was a lot cleaner, a lot more direct. So I think with that, my belief is that our registration numbers for free and reduced lunch has increased. And I was wondering if administration could let us know if that's the case. Now that parents are doing the online registration, which, was different than a couple years ago when I first started on the board, have we had an increase in free and reduced lunch registration?
The application that you're referring to, Ms. Counts, is related to, I'm assuming your child might attend a CEP school. So that is an income data collection process that we're required to do for CEP schools. The application process for a non-CEP school is launched in mid-July. USDA doesn't allow us to put out the meal application until after July 1st. But I can assure you it is a very simple process like you're referring to, very similar, where parents just go click on a link and fill in their information. Our current free percentage for our non-CEP district-wide is 65% free and reduced, which is down about 3% from prior years. But again, with meals being free for the past 2 years, we have seen a much lower response rate in our application collection response. So we are anticipating with the launch in mid-July that we'll see our numbers most likely increase, just because now families are going to need to complete that application at those 27 schools in order to qualify.
I wonder, it is unfortunate that it can't be directly linked to the whole registration process, because it just makes it so simple that it's just a one-time thing. So I wonder if there's a way that, going forward, if we can look at a way of kind of pre-qualifying people, and under, the way that it was worded was really nice. I know it's not necessarily a waiver if you're not a CEP school,
Sorry if I got that wrong, but if there's a way that we can link it to the registration or have some sort of pre-qualification, so that at least we can have people aware and schools aware of who might be able to qualify and what they can kind of depend on as far as with their budget, or if they qualify under this CEP program. CPE, I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions? Ms. Shaw.
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. I personally, I don't want to see us increase the meal prices. I know there's a reasoning for it. But, you know, these students were charged with them for the entire day. And so I feel like, you know, we should be obligated to feed them for free. Also, you know, like Ms. Counts said, I think it's so unfortunate that when parents are registering for these CEP schools, or the non-CEP schools rather, they don't get that question right in that process. So that's unfortunate. But, you know, many of those students at the non-CEP schools, they may need a free lunch. You know, maybe their parents didn't realize about the link to apply. And so I want to be really cautious in regards to raising the meal prices. And I'm really it was kind of disappointing to see like what happens when there's a student who doesn't have enough money to pay for lunch on their account, and then they're given an alternative meal, which is kind of like an othering. You know what I mean? They get this tiny meal, especially high school students get a piece of fruit and a cheese stick. Why don't they get a actual meal? Because you think the high school students who are like adult size would need more nutrition. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I think that's really unfortunate. And I know this isn't about like that specifically, but I just want us to. I don't want to see an increase in prices without an increase in quality. And I know the food's good, but let's see more fresh food. You know what I mean? And so if we can subsidize the meals, if we can cover it as a district for all non-CEP schools, I think we should do that, because poverty sometimes is invisible, and sometimes neglect is invisible. You know, some of these households who may make $50K a year, perhaps their parents don't always fill up the fridge. You know what I mean? And so I really want students to have access to food if they want to have access to that food. And I really, really want us as a board to maybe consider changing that, the alternative meal once a student has, have $2 debt on their books. Like, let's just give them the regular meal. And I'm also curious, maybe you know this, do we have a lot of food waste in our schools? Are we throwing away meals that are heated up and then there's nowhere to, maybe we can approach the deficit in another way than raising costs for students and parents.
I'll just chime in as a board member who was on the board when we said everyone will get a hot lunch and it will be just like everybody else. We're not going to even highlight it. It's just going to happen. And then we had $1 million price tag on the number of meals. And it was difficult because we had to make tough decisions about that. And so I do think that we've done what we can as far as accommodating like 2 meals where you get every option for K-8. We did the same thing with high school. And what we found is the high school students tended to want the 50-cent option of cheese and stick. I mean, I wish my daughter would eat a piece of fruit and a cheese stick at lunch. She doesn't even eat that. And so as much as I don't want to increase the cost, if there's a way for us to reduce it, I hope that you guys will come back to the board and bring it. But otherwise, I know that this is something that we have to do, and it needs to be clear in policy. So I'll go ahead and move the item. Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Ravi, did you have a question?
I had one quick question.
Sure, of course.
So I couldn't find it in the presentation. Did I hear you correctly? So this small increase of 25 cents in breakfast, of 20 cents at lunch, if you if we assume that all 9,000 students that don't have free and reduced won't have free and reduced next year, you said over $700,000. Just
Yeah,
for that.
it was
That's not
just-
the total increase. That's just the increase. Will
That's
be
just
700.
covering that increase, not the entire meal.
Yeah, we've made so many decisions based on just $1 million here and there. That's a huge amount, and especially if this is going to be affecting our middle and upper class, individuals in TUSD. I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? I'll have a roll call vote. Yolanda, please, or ask for a roll call vote.
Ms. Shaw,
No.
Ms. Counts,
Yes.
Ms. Luna Rose,
No.
Dr. Robbie,
Yes.
Ms. Grijalva.
Yes. And again, none of us want to increase costs for our students, but we also then have to find out where the funding is going to come from. So I appreciate you coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, so the item passed 3-2 with Ms. Luna Rose and Ms. Shaw voting against. And if we can remember to vote online, please. Okay, 6.9, agreement with the Buskoyaki tribe for the sale of the former Ritchie Elementary School with authorization for the operations program manager to execute the agreement. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, President Grijalva, members of the governing board, I'd like to welcome Mr. Nodine to the podium to discuss the recommended sale of Ritchie Elementary to Buskoyaki tribe.
Thank you, Mr. Nodine. Welcome.
Thank
Nice to
you.
see you in person and not just on a
Yes,
Zoom.
I know.
It's nice.
President Grijalva, members of the board, Dr. Trujillo, and Council Ross, it is a pleasure to be here and actually in person, so thank you. This is related to the closure of Ritchie, which happened in 2010. Shortly after that, the voters approved the sale of Ritchie. We didn't sell it. We actually leased it to the tribe, and the tribe was really good. The Buskoyaki tribe was really good at maintaining it and keeping it up and protecting it from vandalism and so on. So shortly, just a few months ago, they decided they wanted to purchase it. They made an offer of $2.2 million, and that's a good offer relative to the appraisals. And so we'd like you to look at that offer and consider it. A couple other things related to that. It's a 30-day closing, so very fast. Okay. They know the property and they've done their research, so they know what's involved in purchasing it. And then the other thing is they did agree to put a restriction, a deed restriction on it, which we will record, which says that they can't operate it as a private or a charter school. And that's really all there is to it. And they have reviewed it. Their attorneys reviewed it, and they're ready to move forward as well.
Thank you. That was one, those school closure hearings were so painful. I remember vividly the one at Ritchie. And so I'm so glad that that board at the time really gave the right of first refusal to Ritchie, and that we've continued to keep our agreement with the tribe. It's like, this is your property when you're ready for it. Otherwise, you can continue to lease it indefinitely. I think that they want to make that facility more accessible, and in ways that they don't want to have to ask us for different things,
Right,
which
every
makes
time.
total sense to me, because they've continued to make improvements on the property, and I think it's a win for both communities, and I'm glad that Buskoyaki's moved in this direction. And so, unless there's a comment or I'd like to go ahead and move the item.
I'll second.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Yes, Ms. Luna Rose.
I just want to thank Mr. Nodine. I know your hard work on this, and you've gone back and forth, so really appreciate it. And also wanted to say it was nice to see you in person, too.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion, a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes unanimously. And when is it officially not TUSD property?
It'll probably take us 10 days to get it to the escrow, the title company. Another 10 days after that. Actually, then a 30-day contingency period, and then 10 days after that. So 50, 60 days.
Okay, so maybe we can work with Buskoyaki Tribe to go. I'd like to go through one little tour of Ritchie before it's not ours. I'm sure they'll welcome us back, but Just in case, I want to go look through there. And then there were some things that were specific to Ritchie. Have all of that were TUSD, like little awards and that kind of thing. All of that stuff has already been moved out a long time ago, right?
I didn't see any the last time I went through,
Okay.
so I believe it has.
So if you go next time, invite me, and then I'll cruise around with you.
Okay.
Because it's
I
the
will-
sweetest campus. It is. It'd be a great community center.
I'll go ahead and set something up with the tribe and let you know about it.
Great. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Nodine. All right. Now we are on approval of sole source purchase designations for fiscal year 22-23. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, President Grijalva, members of the governing board, I'd like to welcome our purchasing director, Diana Kierfoot. Every year we formally present to the board a list of vendors that are the actual only vendors that are available to provide the good, the service, or the product that the district counts on, therefore making them eligible for governing board consideration for exemption from the traditional procurement process. And it's that time that we come back to you with that list. So, Ms. Kierfoot, if you'll do the honors.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Governing Board President Grijalva, Board Clerk Luna Rose, board members, Dr. Trujillo, and Council Ross. I bring forward to you tonight the annual list of sole source items that vendors that we would like to have approved for the school year 22-23. In purchasing, sole source to us usually means that it's the only source available for the required materials or service. Sometimes it's just the sole source, it's the only vendor that makes it, or it can also be that there's a system that we use, and other than creating a hardship for the district to leave that system, we will determine that to be a sole source so that we can remain with that system and keep the district going. Our purchasing department, we do, in order for an item to be a sole source, we do go through a procurement process. We do look for quotes. We do seek out vendors. We do have vendors who come in and say, I'm a sole source vendor. We usually take that information, say thank you, and then we go ahead and do a process because it is required by Arizona Administrative Code for us to determine that those vendors are sole source vendors for us. So tonight I bring to you the list of those sole source vendors that were attached to the BAI.
Okay, board members, any questions? I'll go ahead and move the item.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second by Ms. Luna Rose. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we're on item 6.11, approval to use cooperative purchasing agencies and contracts for cumulative purchases in excess of $250,000 for fiscal year 22-23. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, President Grijalva, board members, I'll ask our purchasing director to remain in place. I'll also ask our assistant superintendent or our director for ex-ed to also join us on this item, because we'll also be spending some time talking about the role of Maxim, since that was brought to our attention during call to the audience in terms of filling vacancies, particularly what we're seeing in ex-ed with teachers and paraprofessionals. But this item is traditionally, like our sole source vendors, brought to the board for consideration because it encompasses those goods and services that through several past fiscal years have easily exceeded the board's governing board's $250,000 threshold. And rather than having to come back several times during the year, we traditionally present this list to the board for its consideration. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Ms. Kierfoot.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Trujillo. Again, good evening. This item is the annual list that we bring for your approval for the cooperative purchasing agencies. There's a list of cooperative agencies that we use along with cooperative contracts. Those are contracts that other agencies, other governmental agencies, also school districts, that we are members of their cooperative groups. They go out, they do the formal procurements, and then we opt into those contracts, and we're allowed to use those contracts. TUSD, we also have cooperative contracts that we have put out there that other school districts and other agencies also use. But for this list, it's a cumulative amount. It's everything district-wide. People buy 5,000 here, 10,000 there, and as it's added together district-wide, any contract that goes over 250,000, we need to bring to you for approval. The items on this list are, the vendors on this list are usually those vendors who, as we start off the school year, we're still purchasing computers, we're still purchasing janitorial supplies, and those kind of things that we need to keep that going, because we know on those, historically, we are going to reach 250,000, some fairly quickly. But if an item of any single project or any certain purchase is $250,000, we are going to bring that to you directly. You will approve that as a separate BAI item at a single governing board meeting. So for the cooperative agencies, we are members of those agencies. I go in and I verify that annually, verify that we are updated on our memberships with those agencies. And then with the contracts we've gone through, and I've evaluated with my department, with my staff, we go through, check the spends, and we verify that the contracts are all valid, in place. If any of the new contracts are, if there's new contracts replacing the old, we have that information on here, what cooperative agency they're now with. So I bring this forward to you for your approval for the 2022-23 school year.
Board members, any questions? I'll go ahead and move the item.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second by Ms. Luna Rose. Ms. Shaw?
Thank you, President Grijalva. I just have a question regarding Maxim, and I understand I have the PDF pulled up with the itemized spreadsheet, basically, of all the different people we're going to be approving. But it says Maxim Healthcare Services, and this is not just for substitute services, it's for contracted special education to the tune of $487,000. And I was wondering if you could just break down those costs. How much of that money is going towards the substitute services, or is that all substitute services? Is that number? Because I know that you have two things here, and I know Maxim, we kind of did several things this year, but is that specifically just for general substitute services? How much of that number is for subs?
I'll go ahead and answer that. The name Contracted Special Education and Other Substitute Services is actually the name of the contract.
Oh, I see.
The amount, $487,000, was what I determined going into the vendor to see the amount that we were spending. This amount does not include those larger amounts that you as a board separately approved. And this is an estimate of what they might spend if they need to. Basically, we're just asking for this contract to be able to be used in excess of $250,000 district-wide, but any single purchase of that would go separately. I'll turn it over to Dr. Salmon for the question regarding the special ed.
Dr. Salmon, you briefed the team on the status of where we're at with ex-ed staffing at our Leadership Monday, and I think our board should probably hear that information with parapros and teachers, and I know that Maxim is one of our primary vendors.
Absolutely, yes. So good evening, board members, President Grijalva, Dr. Trujillo. So yes, we are in a dire staffing shortage in exceptional education. We have 56 teacher vacancies, 120 TA vacancies. We have 11 social worker vacancies and 5 school psychologist vacancies. We also have shortages in health services. And so a part of this funding source here would provide the one-on-one health support that some of our students need. So many of our students who have been at home have not been receiving the health services. So we didn't have to have funding for that. But planning for them to return, we have up to 6 students who might need this support. And that would cost us about $400,000 just to provide those medical services to students who need those in classrooms. And we have reached out to Maxim. We are anticipating maybe having 2 substitute teachers And so 2 substitute teachers would be maybe around 120 to 125,000 for the year for the substitutes. We have a different process that we contract with for any of our other teachers and TAs in the classrooms.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So, okay, so I mean, I'm okay with moving this, but I am not okay with paying for contracted subs, general subs. I understand that there's a critical need in other places. And of course, if we paid everyone well, there wouldn't be so many vacancies. But like, in the meantime, there are some places where I guess we have to have some maximum people. But I know we have a big sub pool, and I would like us to maybe, can we have a caveat where we exclude subs from that contract? Because we have TUSD subs, and you know, they're close to our community. Some of them are famous for being around for decades, you know what I mean? And so I just want to keep fostering that TUSD community, and I feel like if we keep outsourcing, we're continuing the climate where our employees are disgruntled.
Dr. Trujillo.
This board has taken bold action to offer some of the highest rates for daily and long-term work in Pima County, and other districts keep upping the rates and we keep matching. There are 56 ex-ed teacher vacancies in the district right now. This is also a matter of IEP compliance. If there are any subs right now watching, and I've made this call before, we don't want to have a maximum highly qualified special education teacher, ex-ed teacher in the classroom. We need you. If you're watching, we will happily take you. We have not seen it. We have not seen highly qualified ex-ed teachers in the sub ranks stepping forward in the numbers that we need them to fill the vacancies. We haven't seen them on the open market with applicants. This is not a first choice. We have not seen this with paraprofessionals. We have not seen retired paraprofessionals coming back in the numbers that we need. And every time that we have a classroom that doesn't have the committed resources that were agreed upon and that were mandated through the IEP process, every day that we go without that permanent employee, we're risking litigation. We're risking violating IEPs. And so what this vendor allows us to do is to get somebody in there now. Get a teacher in there now. Get a paraprofessional in there now. We can continue the hiring and selection process. We can continue the call for subs. And the moment that we do get that candidate that wants to make a permanent home in TUSD, absolutely, you know, we're totally about that. So I really want to make sure that the public is aware of that, this board's aware of that. It's just the nature of where we're at right now in a fierce competition for exceptional education talent.
Thank you. Dr. Ravi?
Thank you, President Grijalva, and thank you, Dr. Trujillo, for really kind of putting in those terms and for the presentation. You know, ideal and reality are definitely not together right now, and we'll continue to work as a governing board with our district leadership to try to get closer to ideal and find ways within the budget limitations that we have to get closer to ideal. But the reality is we need to have these positions filled, and so I'll move the item as presented by administration.
Okay. I think we moved it. Yeah, we did.
Oh, now second.
We moved it. That's okay. No, it was motion and second, and now we're just chatting.
Okay.
Yeah, Ms. Shaw. Thank you, though, Dr. Ravi.
Thank you, President Grijalva. Yeah, I'm not disputing the fact that we need, special ed employees, and Maxim is where we can get it immediately. But Ms. Salmon said, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that $120,000 is going to be for 2 substitute teachers, correct?
That would be the cost for 2 substitute teachers.
Right.
And I also wanted to add that we don't have a mechanism to hire substitute TAs. There's not a certification to be a substitute TA. So if we have like a teaching assistant who's on leave, the only way that we can pick up someone to be in that position is a certified teacher who would fill the position. And of course, that pay rate is a little bit less. So that definitely is another limitation where we can have subs that we can put in TA positions, even though they are teachers.
Okay. And so those 2 subs, and those aren't Special education subs, right?
They are special education.
Oh, they are. Okay. Okay.
And so our special education subs are willing to go across the district. Like one day they're at Saguaro, another day they might be at Valencia. Like any place that we have a need, they're assigned and it's a daily assignment for them. Sometimes it ends up being a little bit longer, but that's the flexibility that we have currently. And we absolutely would welcome having more employees that we could place in these positions.
Okay. And excuse my ignorance, but our regular TUSD subs, are they certified to be subs for special ed, or no? They need different certification?
No,
right?
they need a different
Okay.
certification.
All right. Well, with that with that new information, I would be comfortable then with
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes unanimously. Thank you. And now we are on, where are we? 6.12, analysis approval of expenditures for utility costs fiscal year 22-23 to include approval to award RFP 231127 solid waste recycling collection services district-wide. Dr. Trujillo.
President Grijalva, board members, I'd like to turn it over to our Chief Operations Officer to talk about...
That's a very long title. I'm just throwing it.
It's a long title,
Right.
to talk about our expenditure requests in the areas of utilities. Spoiler alert, we are looking at more increases and more surcharges, and just want to kind of prepare the community and
That's
the board
for the sticker shock?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo, and good evening, Board President, members of the board. Each year, our team brings to the board approval for utilities for the coming up fiscal year. A few weeks ago, we came to you with information regarding a very notable increase for gas in the district through Southwest Gas. And so you will see that referred to tonight as part of this update. We also will talk to you comprehensively about the other utility costs for the district, as well as our fuel costs for running our yellow fleet and our white fleet in the district. So, Gene, am I doing this? Or there we go. Gene, can you back up just one? So the other thing that we will talk to you about is a consumable watch list. There are certain things, as we've seen over and over again with supply chain, labor costs, other factors that are driving up cost of consumables and other resources. So we do have a couple items that we want to present to the board as well that we're just keeping an eye on. So with that, Jeannie, next slide. And I'll turn it over to Ms. Carefoot for a minute.
Thank you. I'll move the mic back down. Okay. Here we go. Better? Okay. For the 22-23 utility expenditures, Tina Cook, who is the manager of utilities for TUSD, has gone through and has created this spreadsheet. Great work. For electricity, the vendors that we use, she has estimated the budget for 22-23. It shows in the comments that we are within budget as a district for the 21-22, and shows that we anticipate being within the budget for 22-23. For natural gas, of course, that's the one that Blaine mentioned with the Southwest Gas, that we did have the increase that we brought to the board earlier this spring. We were over budget in 21-22, this current fiscal year, by $700,000, and we do anticipate that that increase will remain the same for next fiscal year at $700,000. For the water services, we are within budget this current year and anticipate being within budget next fiscal year. The refuse, I do want to make a note that I will be covering the Republic Services trash recycle in a couple of slides, but just to let you know that this fiscal year we're within budget, but next fiscal year we do anticipate a little over a $400,000 increase in trash and recycle services for the district. Under telecommunications, these contracts are ones that are through the state and various contracts that TUSD has directly with the vendors. We are within budget this year and look to have about a $25,000, $26,000 increase for next fiscal year. And I will turn it back over to Blaine.
Yeah, thank you, Diana. And Jean, next slide. Or Kevin. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. So there are critical fuels that we use to run our fleets in the district. The biggest of these, of course, is diesel for our yellow fleet. So you'll see on an annual budget, we have a budget of about $1.4 million that we pay for diesel fuel to run our buses in the district. For the fiscal year that we're just completing, we were within budget on that. As the board is aware, we didn't run near the routes this year that we've run in years past. So as we go into fiscal year 22-23 for the next school year, we anticipate that we will be running more routes. That is, in fact, our hope, that we're able to deliver more transportation services for our communities. So we could and see some increase in fuel costs, both of just what's happening in the market and the rising of fuel costs, coupled with the fact that we hope to actually be logging more miles and transporting more kids. So right now we're estimating about a $500,000 increase for the fiscal year ahead compared to the year that we're just completing. So that's for diesel fuel. As the board is also aware, we have a large white fleet of vehicles that we use to maintain our district. Those vehicles are used for various types of supports that we provide, our skilled trades that go out to our schools, as well as our schools themselves have vans that they use for various programs. So we have vehicles within our school safety team that go across the district to make sure our campuses are secure. So there's lots of things that drive the cost of gasoline for our white fleet in the district. This is an annual budget right now of $550,000. We are within budget for this year. It's really going to depend on how many miles we log for the year ahead and what happens at the price at the pump, whether or not we'll see a notable fuel increase. We're certainly going to keep our eye on that and make sure that we're efficiently using our vehicles in our white fleet. So right now, that's what we're anticipating for white fleet. And then finally, we have compressed natural gas. We have 32 buses in our fleet that actually run on CNG. And so that annual budget is $180,000. We are well within budget for this year for compressed natural gas. And we expect for the year ahead also to be in budget with the price of that compared to other fuels. Jean, next slide. So here's the watch list that we wanted to make the board aware of. So first off, for replacement parts and repair and maintenance for both our buses and our white fleet, like everything else, we are seeing increase in costs for parts, whether it's tires or batteries or things of that nature we're seeing an increase in that. We have a $2 million annual budget to cover that across all of our fleet. We're within budget this year, but we are simply going to have to watch for the year ahead. We don't want to ask for an increase right now until we know that we're certainly going to need that. So we're just going to keep this on a watch list to watch as we get the fiscal year underway and see how things progress for the coming fiscal year. The other thing that we want to watch is actually the cost of paper is going up. And the paper right now for our district, aggregated district-wide, we spend about $200,000. So we could see a cost increase in this area. However, as the board is aware, we are right at the place now where we are a one-to-one district and across all of our school campuses with digital technology. We expect as we launch the new school year, there's going to be a great opportunity to be using less paper for the purposes of instruction. And so we'll be sending less things to the printed page, and that will help us manage our costs for copier paper. That's a cultural shift, and we will be working with our school leadership and school teams to make sure that we really take advantage of the digital resources we have now. So that is the last item for that, and I'm going to turn it back over to Diana to talk a little bit more about our refuge.
Okay. Thanks, Blaine. The contract that we currently have for refuse, the solid waste and recycling collection services for the district expires June 30th of this year. And we issued an RFP 231127. It was issued through our azpurchasing.org, the district's bid board. 36 vendors were notified. 1 vendor responded. The initial proposal was evaluated, and a phase 2 best and final offer was requested of the vendor. The committee evaluated the best and final offer and has recommended Republic Service be awarded the RFP for solid waste and recycling collection services for the district. Estimated initial 1-year term cost is $700,000 with a possible 4 annual renewals for a total contract not to exceed $3.5 million. And this $700,000 amount is, for the first year, is included on the utilities budget for FY 22-23. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, any questions? Okay, this is an action item, so I'll go ahead and move the item.
I'll second.
A motion and a second by Ms. Luna Rose. Any discussion? Yes, Ms. Shaw.
Thank you. I just remembered my question. Really surprised to see the charges for the electricity and like the solar, considering all the solar we have. Are we renting those out? Is that why, like, because I figured like when I was campaigning that solar would offset some of our electricity costs, but it doesn't seem to be that way because I think that was a $12 million price tag on electricity.
We're going to have our energy manager, Ms. Tina,
Okay.
come for that question.
Thank you.
Good evening. Governing Board President, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Trujillo. As for the solar is a 20-year agreement. There was 3 phases that was done for that, and we locked ourselves into a rate with no escalation. So as you see rates that go up within our utility providers for TEP and TRICO, that rate stays the same, and we've been able to balance the increases through the solar because of that.
Okay.
So.
All right.
Yeah, it did save
Thank
us
you.
the increase,
Oh,
but
it
the
did? Okay.
cost is still a huge sticker shock.
The cost is still, yeah.
And would more solar panels offset some of those costs even more, or like potentially?
So when we did the evaluation of the solar, we maxed out what we could do at the sites, at all of our school sites and support sites at this time. We could go back and reevaluate, but I don't believe that you'd be able to get the extent of what we did for the solar that first round.
Oh, okay. Because I know, like, I'm not sure when we constructed all of those solar panels for our parking lots, but I mean, I haven't really seen any solar panels on the roofs, and I'm not sure if that's impossible, but.
So at the time of the evaluation for the solar, we did look at rooftop installations, but we decided against it because of the penetrations onto the roof, because of the age of the roofs. It's really, you need to hit those right when the roof is brand new.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to follow up, we maximized the square footage and probably put them on some schools that, hindsight being 2020, were real small. But we were really doing what you're talking about, like, let's put solar panels everywhere. It'll be great for our school, and we'll have this educational. And it has been really positive. But there were some schools that were not real happy with us because we took over like the one open space that they had on campus and put some solar panels up. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? All right. I have a motion, a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes unanimously. Is Ms. Count still with us?
Thank you.
Yes? Okay, great. Thank you. I believe she was. I just wanted to make sure because I I can't see.
Ms. Grijalva.
Thank you. So Dr. Trujillo, I'm wondering if we can move up item 7.4.
President Grijalva, board members, I would like to recommend we do move item 7.4. I do know we've got some press here and communities waiting for the conversation.
Right. And so, is there any opposition to that? Okay, great. So we're going to skip then and go to 7.4 TUSD School Safety Protocol and Emergency Response. Dr. Trujillo.
Yeah, President Grijalva, members of the governing board, I'd like to turn it over to our Director for School Safety, Mr. Joseph Helms, for tonight's presentation. Thank you, Mr. Helms.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. President Grijalva, governing board, thank you for this opportunity to come in and speak with you this evening about the heavy investments that Tucson Unified School District has continued to make in school safety. There's the clicker. So for this brief presentation, I want to quickly kind of go over what our current organizational chart is, what school safety is, our roles and responsibilities, because I know there's been a lot of inquiry in what TUSD does for school safety. So for not only for your pleasure, but also for the pleasure of anybody watching this evening, we'll kind of go over that quickly. We'll speak about some of the emergency response protocols that we currently have in place that we try to practice on a continual basis, and our student threat assessment system that we put in place a couple years ago, but is continually evolving and trying to improve upon on a consistent basis. And then, of course, I'll be asking for a proposal at the end for your approval. So this is our current organizational chart as we exist today in school safety. Again, I'm at top, and then I have with me, behind me, Mr. David Vildesea, he's our safety and security manager, and also Mike Breitenbecker, who is our safety and training manager. They're the ones that do the majority of the work on the day-to-day basis. I just get to take all the credit for it. When people think of school safety, it's usually our school safety supervisors that they envision. These are the individuals that work the day shift with the weekends off, so during school times. These are our 5 employees, or our school safety supervisors that we have responding to our calls for service at the individual schools. Currently, they are responsible for individual regions within the school, so that's their area of operation. And just some of the roles and responsibilities, again, responding to any calls for service that they may have at those individual sites. The reason they're referred to as school safety supervisors is initially they were supposed to be providing on-site training, supervision, and leadership of some of the campus monitors. Due to increased call volume, unfortunately that has gone by the wayside a little bit, which is something we're trying to correct. They investigate any reports of wrongdoings that can involve children or people outside of it affecting the schools. They investigate any missing students. Those would be students that either didn't show up to school or didn't show up to home after school. And any disturbance or any kind of unrest that may occur in schools. Something newly that we have assumed responsibility for was having to dispose of any controlled substances that are located on school grounds. So if a student is found to have in possession something they shouldn't, it's now our responsibility to go collect that and subsequently dispose of that. Our uniformed security officers, these are the ones that work the off hours. So they usually start around 3 p.m. and continue to about 7 a.m. in the morning. And then they have the 24-hour coverage during the weekends. They play a very similar role to those of the school safety supervisors during the day, although they don't necessarily respond to the schools as much. They oftentimes will do just site checks on schools. They respond to any disorderly conduct, assaults, or anything that may be occurring in after-school hour events. And then a lot of what they have to do is respond to other district emergencies, whether it be criminal nature like break-ins or graffiti or criminal damage, or anything that may just be a facilities-related issue, maybe broken plumbing or something like that. We receive those notifications, those individuals respond out there. Currently, we have 8 people in those positions, but again, 7 days a week, 24-hour coverage on the weekends, so it gets spread pretty thin. All of it is done through this control center, and that control center couldn't occur without the school safety dispatchers that we have in place. They're integral. They're the ones that receive the calls. They identify what needs need to be met, and they dispatch the appropriate officers to respond to that situation. What they also do a lot of times is they're almost the switchboard for the school. People not sure who to contact for any specific incident that may have arisen. They call school safety. The dispatchers are able to connect them with the necessary entity within TUSD. They also act as a liaison for the 911 systems that outside PC-WIN or Pima County 911 system. They have direct contact with them, so we can have immediate contact with our public safety partners in case they're needed to respond as well. A couple other things they do is they continually monitor all of our alarm systems, including burglar, fire, and lockdown. And that's kind of an important topic that we'll get to in just a second, the reason for I want to expand those areas. And they also monitor our current TUSD surveillance systems. Training is obviously a hugely important part of anything having to do with safety. And right now we have one individual who kind of splits his time. He's our lead investigator for any kind of critical incidents that need to be investigated. These incidents are historically criminal or sexual in nature, or anything non-criminal that would constitute a significant violation of governing board policy. Sometimes we're also asked to conduct investigations when a higher level, maybe more professional level of investigation is needed, and this would be at the will of the superintendent or human resources director. And I'll continue to fly through this, but I think it's important to know, don't want to pass anybody up. Also, it's in school safety, we have traffic safety supervisors. These individuals play a crucial role in providing direct and on-scene supervision to our numerous crossing guards that we have throughout TUSD. They're tasked with going out on scene, providing that in-person, on-scene supervision and guidance to the numerous crossing guards to ensure that we can get our kids and other family members safely to and from schools. They also conduct a lot of internal investigations, those specifically occurring within school buses. And they conduct traffic flow and safety assessments at school. So when we're building a new school or redoing the parking lots or something, we call upon them to go out there and work with facilities, work with the engineers to ensure that there's a smooth transition and that the traffic flow through that school or around that school is as safe as possible. And another critical part they play is that anybody that needs CPR or first aid training within TUSD usually goes through the traffic safety supervisors. Now, we do pull in others, and transportation also provides some of those services, but we end up having to do a lot of the training for those throughout the district. And of course, gotta love our crossing guards. They're the face of TUSD. It's what many people see going to and from work. They represent our district. And Dr. Trujillo, sorry to correct you a little bit, but it does say 45.806 FTEs, and the reason for that is many of them work 4 hours a day, so it's a very part-time. We actually have about 150 crossing guards and a pretty significant amount of turnover. So again, the traffic safety supervisors do have a lot of work in making sure that the new crossing guards that are out there are doing their job and making everything as safe as possible. And then obviously there's going to be a lot of administrative work behind the scenes with crossing guards, and we do employ one crossing guard supervisor. And last but not least, before we get to the real part, key control is another aspect of school safety. They're having to do mostly with the hard keys. Right now, the majority of TUSD facilities are still hard keys. We are slowly trying to transition to more of an electronic system that can be more easily controlled. But right now we have a significant number of keys that are out there, and the ladies over at Key Control manage that for us. What I really wanted to take a minute on, focus on, is our emergency managers. And this is something that I have a lot of passion for, and kind of coming in, I think that's where Dr. Trujillo and I really agreed upon when it was kind of going through the process and initially came on. Because what I see for emergency management is ways to empower everybody within our district. It doesn't have to necessarily rely on any individuals, including school safety, to ensure the safety of the schools. It's really a community approach to doing so. And I was really impressed when I first came on that we actually employ 2 emergency managers within TUSD. Shows our dedication to that. And I think if unfortunately we ever have to navigate a critical incident, we'd be better situated to do so, to not only respond but also recover after the incident. Primary roles that they play within school safety are they maintain our emergency operations plan. The EOP is basically, it's broken into 3 parts. We have a basic, a functional annex, and a threat-specific annexes. And this is required by ARS. They develop and maintain classroom after-school emergency response plans. In fact, recently they worked very closely with our interscholastics team to develop after-school response plans specific to any interscholastic events that are occurring within the district or outside. Again, a way to empower not only relying on the school safety supervisors to help navigate an incident, but empowering those athletic directors and those coaches on having that situational awareness to respond to something in case something came up. And then majority of their time is spent within schools providing training on the incident command structure. ICS is something that's mandated from a presidential directive from FEMA that any large organization utilize ICS to respond to an emergency situation. They also oversee our student threat assessment protocols, which I'll be talking about a little bit more in just a minute. And they help instruct everybody within TUSD on what our standard response protocols are. And these are our current standard response protocols. And there has been a recent change to these. Historically, that first one, secure, was known either as a soft lockdown or a modified lockdown. Now, we kind of evaluated that, as we always do on any of our response protocols, to make sure they're as clear and concise as possible. We don't want any confusion if we have to enact any of these. So instead of utilizing something like a soft lockdown or a modified lockdown, we're transitioning over to just secure. And secure is going to be one of those situations where there's some kind of incident occurring outside the school. This can be some kind of law enforcement activity outside, a wild animal in the area, something like that where it's imperative to bring everybody in the school within the confines of the walls, lock the exterior doors, but school can still carry on somewhat normally within inside the walls. The threat is outside. Evacuate is something we're all familiar with. We all practice our monthly evacuation drills when we do our fire drills. This can also be utilized for gas leaks or other type of situations occurring within the school, and we need to get everybody out as safe and effectively as possible. Shelter protocols, these are usually reserved for significant weather events, such as monsoon storms coming in. This may occur at the time when students are supposed to be getting let out. We need to hold everybody inside the school for a little while to ensure their safety. Once that's done, then we can go through a regular egress plan. And then lockdown. Again, lockdown is one of those terms we really want to reserve for those really critical situations, when things really get sideways. Specifically, if there is an active or hostile intruder within the school. And then our student threat assessment. Again, this is another big passion of mine. Something, again, that I was very pleased to see when I first came on with the district, and something I would like to continue to grow. And I think that first bullet point spells it out. The U.S. Secret Service is the ones that study this. They're the ones that study active threats. And they say that a threat assessment is absolutely the best practice for preventing targeted school violence. What a school threat assessment does, or as we refer to it as a violence prevention threat assessment, is basically it pulls in a multidisciplinary team. Now, this team usually consists within a minimum of 3 people within the school. And some of the basic members are going to be a school administrator within the school, a school safety officer who may be assigned, a school counselor or psychologist, and then SRO, because we do still have some in our county schools, and then any ad hoc members that we deem necessary to bring in to help us navigate the situation, understand the threat, and come up with a plan. And that's the intent. It's basically very specific protocols to follow to take the subjectivity out of analyzing a threat and really come up with real hard approaches to how we can best mitigate or prevent something significant from occurring. This training, again, is provided by our school safety management, and all of the forms are all out online. Something we really, any threats that we're advised of that come into school safety, and these can be transient threat, things like something maybe just written on a bathroom wall, all the way to a significant threat such as a phone call or something more. A lot of what we're seeing now are social media type threats. All of these threats are investigated by school safety, and all are suggested, and the school administrators are kind of walked through the process if they're unfamiliar on how to conduct a very accurate student threat assessment protocols. So again, this is our current organizational chart, but this is what I would like to suggest we add. Basically, it's an addition of 8 additional personnel within school safety to help provide better coverage and provide better services and be more of a resource as opposed to a response to our schools. First, I want to start off with the school safety lieutenant. Anytime you're working within the kind of business I'm in, oversight, supervision, leadership is imperative. This individual will provide that on-field leadership to the school safety officers, especially if we're able to increase them, as I'll talk about in just a minute. It will provide some consistency across the board to ensure that all the schools are receiving the same quality of resources that we can provide within the schools. It'll provide that more direct training, and it's easier to identify holes in the training for any specific individuals and be able to address those specific training needs. In addition, this individual will be able to kind of step back when a critical incident does occur and reallocate resources as deemed necessary. If there's a situation occurring at one school, can we pull some of those resources, whether it be monitors or school safety officers from another school, to help supplement that school to navigate that situation? Or if there's a significant event or a threat at that school, same idea. Somebody that can kind of manage that, step back, and have that command and control of the overall district. In addition, we need 2 additional supervisors, or I'm sorry, 2 additional dispatchers. These dispatchers, currently as required by law, we have to have 2 individuals within our dispatch center at any given time because we monitor our own fire alarm systems. Currently, we only have, oftentimes we'll have 2 dispatchers during the day. If one of the dispatchers calls in sick, if one has to step away for lunch, excuse themselves for whatever other reason, currently we're having to bring an officer in off the street to cover that dispatch position to make sure we have 2 people in there. In addition, we've already seen situations where we'll have 2 incidents going on at the same time within the district. One school may be dealing with a gas leak within the school was what happened, and we had to evacuate. At the same time, we had a potential protest at another school. Those both required significant attention, both required a dispatcher, so being able to split that but still have the resources to answer the phone calls is imperative. And then, of course, I think why we're really here is to talk about these 5 additional school safety supervisors that I would like to add. What I would like to see is, again, is for us to be able to transition from more of that response where we currently sit. Again, the individuals that we have, the increased call volume that we've dealt with over the last school year has really put us in a position where we can't provide that resource that we really want to for schools. We really want to be able to focus in on the training within the individual schools and be a partner for that school administration. So the idea is to basically assign 1 school safety supervisor per high school. This individual would become a champion of safety within that school, and would also oversee the feeder schools, allowing for that individual to kind of embed themselves within not only the school community, but the overall neighborhoods, becoming familiar and trying to get to know everybody that's involved in that community, because that's sometimes the best way to prevent acts of violence from occurring. In addition, this person would be able to provide increased training within the school. Again, empowering not only school safety officers, but staff, administrators, and providing them the necessary training they would need to be able to navigate a critical incident if or when they occur. So it's just important that we continue to be able to put that person in there, that they get to know the school and the staff and be that partner, especially when we're seeing, like Dr. Trujillo mentioned earlier, a quarter of our new principals are going to be new this year. This person can help guide those principals and provide them with the education, provide them with the training they'll need to be able to manage their school if a critical incident were to occur. So there is a cost associated with this, of course. These are estimated costs as of right now. Still working with our human resources to try to identify the cost associated with the first one. 2 additional school safety dispatchers would cost about $81,000 per year, and 5 additional school safety supervisors would cost approximately $250,000 a year, coming in just shy of about $400,000 per year. Again, this is a significant investment, I understand that, especially when TUSD is so dedicated to keeping the dollars in the classroom. But I think it's a necessary investment to make sure that we can, again, provide those resources that we need to provide to schools, who can, and in turn, provide those resources to the children they serve. And I must be done because it's supposed to go to this. There it is. Questions?
Thank you. Dr. Trujillo, you put your hand up.
Yeah, I would just like to close by saying this is not a security guard initiative. This is not getting involved in whether or not good guys with guns are going to be able to address some of the horrific violence that we've seen across the country, particularly in schools. But what this is an investment in training and professional development and having somebody inside the school that can teach emergency response behaviors that are proven effective in not stopping a school shooting, but maybe surviving one, maybe mitigating the damage, maybe focusing in on those behaviors that we know are problematic around the district. We know that doors are left open. We know that's a challenge. We know that some of our entrance points, some of our egress points, some of our departure points, they need to become harder targets. And when you look at the role of where we are as an administration and a governing board, so much about school safety and employee safety is out of our control. But the locus of control that we do enjoy is how hard we're able to make our schools as targets. And that means investing in infrastructure, the fencing, the doors, making it harder to access our campus if you're an intruder. And then the other side of that is teaching security-minded and safety-minded behaviors. And that's really the spirit of what we're trying to do. What I like about the proposal is a focus on teaching our monitors. Our monitors are amazing. They come from the neighborhood. What they have are great relationships with students, community members, and parents. And I think we've seen some outstanding monitors here at Call to the Audience, and they come to the meetings. They love kids. They know parents. But there's a professional development need in terms of teaching them also how to be campus experts in terms of security-minded behavior. So I just wanted to close to make sure that our community, those watching, our employees, and our board know that we're not approaching this as a very simplistic, let's put another security guard to stand at the door to watch everybody. We want this person active. We want this person leading professional development, seminars. We want this person walking around the campus and showing the administration, why is that door open? Look at those gates. You could do this versus that. Look at your parking. Somebody could come in here, and really kind of helping us take control of some of those recommendations. So with that, I'll turn it over to the board for question and discussion.
So I have a question. When we have those PD days, are our monitors, are the school safety personnel that are on our campuses, are we providing them professional development during those 4 days?
Yes. Last time we provided them, for example, on the last PD day, we provided an opportunity for them to do a de-escalation training that we put on. It was over Zoom. The idea, like Dr. Trujillo said, is, training is great as long, and one real quick point I really wanted to make, training is great as long as that training is practiced. And, getting a training a year ago, that knowledge is perishable. And unless you can practice, put that into action, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a full-blown drill. This can be something as easy as a tabletop exercise. So it's having that person on scene to be able to provide that guidance to those monitors. But to answer your question, yes.
Okay, good. I guess my concern is, we, as at the board level are now put in a position of having to protect our children from things that 15 years ago wasn't something that was even a thought in our heads. So, around our elementary schools, a lot of our fences are low because they're designed to keep little people in and kickballs in, not to keep people out. And so here we are having to look at how do we protect our children from people that want to do harm to them on our campuses when, we don't always have the resources to be able to do that. And so I'm glad that Dr. Trujillo addressed what my concern was, which, a lot of the situations that we've seen nationally, there were people that were armed, that were there, and the incident still occurred. Just recently, it's tragic, but I want to see what we're going to do to keep people off of our campuses that we don't want on our campuses without creating a jail environment. And that is going to be like a very thin weave, because it was ironic. I was talking to Dr. Trujillo about this very item, and I was passing by our Pima County Jail, and they were putting up the fencing that we have all around our schools. And I said, oh, there it is. That's how it feels. And a lot of our schools are asking for that. So if additional people on our school safety team would allow that kind of hands-on, let's go around the campus, let's see how the campus functions with students here. Let's see where the exit and entry points are, where we can provide some additional support. That makes sense to me because I know that that's what a lot of our teachers, parents, and staff are asking for. But I don't want to have more people with weapons on our campus. So that's where I need to get a little bit of clarification from you on who the people that are coming on our campuses at this level, what they're going to be bringing, aside from professional development and training, as far as any other kind of weapons, because I know that a lot of our school safety are armed. And that was something that we voted on as well, as a board a long time ago.
Right. So are you looking for clarification on if these individuals that I'm proposing would be armed?
Yes.
Okay. In the proposal, yes. And, just a real quick point is nobody wishes they didn't have to be armed more than me. And I'll be honest with you as well that when I first came into this position, I was a little critical and skeptical of the fact that we employed armed individuals. But seeing, to your point that you said, what we've seen over the last decade or two, in addition to we're already seeing huge spikes in violence around our county and around the nation. We're seeing a decrease in the number of public safety resources that we have available to us, to the point where we're having to assume a lot of the responsibilities that they historically used to do. So to not allow them to be able to take care of themselves. Something that they will tell you as well, and just real quick, I'm sorry, but, I always kind of provide I equate it to an air marshal. An air marshal's job is to guard the cockpit. I always say our job is not to worry about anything. Our job is to guard the cockpit being the school. That's their role, and that's the reason that they have the tools that they have at their disposal in case it comes to that situation. But again, the whole point of this is to really provide that resource to the individual schools and empower those within the school, the teachers, the administrators, the school monitors, and to be able to be school safety champions of themselves.
Right, and I think that when we approved guns for our school safety, we talked very clearly about when people would be armed, and it wouldn't be on our campuses during the normal day, that it was situational where you're going onto a campus where the fire alarm has gone off and it's 3 o'clock in the morning and who's going to be there. So that's my concern, is we've really moved away from having police officers on our campus for different reasons, and I have supported those, but it's one of those frustrations that I have, because if these people are designed to be coming on our campuses to provide PD and support, I'm at a loss as to why they need to have a handgun.
Well, I can tell you from my experience that you can't plan for a significant incident to occur.
Of course not.
And when those types of situations do occur, seconds matter. So for somebody to go, hold on, I need to run back to my car and get the tools I need to address the situation isn't realistic. They have to be able to respond accordingly and very quickly. The other important aspect of this, which I didn't really cover as much as I probably should have in the presentation, is the necessity for not only the training with the school personnel that we will be providing, but the training for the officers who will be on scene. Again, currently with the only 5 situation, for somebody to receive the critical training that they need to be effective with the tools that we provide them, they need a significant amount of training. As we've seen recently, you'll have SWAT teams move in where regular officers may be kind of frozen in a situation. The SWAT officers receive a significant more training to make themselves more competent and confident. So for us to continue to provide the level of security that we need to at our schools in our current environment, the officers themselves need to receive a significant amount of training, and that's something I'm very passionate about as well. Not only should it be training, it should be stress-induced training, be able to navigate stressful situations. And we need to be very critical in how we, approach our hiring and recruiting and so on and so forth, making sure we're having the right individuals in place.
I think I'll talk to you offline about a couple situations that I had with when we had sheriffs and TPD officers on our campus when our students were there, sort of as extra hall monitors, kind of. That's what it sort of felt like. And that's what my concern is about having, we're only really talking about 5 more people on our campuses. So those 5 individuals, if they're increasing the capacity and the training on campus of the people that are there every day, that makes sense to me. Relying on those 5 individuals or the handful of other people that are going to be security on our campuses or an extra set of eyes doesn't make sense to me. So that's sort of, I just wanted you to understand where I was coming from. Okay, thanks. Dr. Ravi, and then Ms. Shaw, and then Ms. Luna Rose. Thanks.
Thank you, President Grijalva, and thank you, Mr. Hamlins, for your presentation. It's actually really nice to see kind of what your team looked like and get an explanation of who the folks are on the team. And I see you all around campus and here at our board meetings, and it's really great to kind of put some job descriptions and some sense of who people are. So I really appreciate your presentation tonight. I'm glad we're talking about this topic right now. I think it's really ripe. A lot of it is based on some of the incidents we've had on our high school and middle school campuses over the last few months. And of course, a lot of it is based on what happened in Uvalde. And as a parent of 3 young kids that are on TUSD elementary school campuses, with my oldest just finishing 4th grade, where most of the deaths occurred in Uvalde, this topic is definitely hitting close to my heart in terms of how do we keep our kids, how do we keep my kids and all of your kids, all of our kids safe in our schools. So I'm really glad we're talking about this. And I think a lot of school districts around the country are talking about this and talking about more officers and more individuals on our campuses to try to keep us safe. The good guys with a gun. Monic comes up a lot. And that's a very visceral reaction. It makes sense, right? More good guys with guns on our campuses, more good guys doing work on our campuses is what's going to keep us safe. But I've been looking and I've been trying, when we first talked about the proposal last week with our superintendent, it initially sounded good and tried to get more on board with it, but the more evidence I looked at to try to find out, what's really going to make an impact, for our students and our safety, it didn't really bear out. The best article I was able to find was from the Journal of Adolescent Health. I've used that journal as a medical professional on clinical and public health issues over my career as a physician and a medical leader. But an article in 2019 looked at 179 school shootings over 20 years, April of 99 to May of 2018. And from their conclusions looking at 179 school shootings, that the presence of school resource officer was unassociated with any reduction in school shooting severity. I looked around PubMed, other sources, try to find other articles that would refute this or give a different impression of what can actually make an impact. Are more people on our campuses going to make a better impact to help with school safety? And I couldn't find much. So tonight, I'm not sure I'm ready to support these positions in a $400,000 spend on a per year basis. I'm really curious to see what my colleagues have to say and what leadership has to say about evidence and if this is really going to make an impact or whether this is something that we're doing that's viscerally sounds right but isn't really going to help move the needle for safety in our campuses. So I haven't made a final decision, but I'm leaning against supporting this proposal, at least to 5 school supervisors tonight. I think this needs to have a much more comprehensive approach. You know, the bigger fences, which is another visceral response, you know, might not be the right answer, but really looking at the evidence, looking at best practices, figuring out what we can really honestly do as a school district of 40+ thousand students and 8,000 teachers and staff and all the families that come in and out of our schools. What can we do to keep them safe? And I think we need a more comprehensive look later on this summer and into the fall to really come up with some solutions that are really evidence-based and not just gut reactions to this issue. And then I can get behind those. But you know, we already have 34 FTEs in the department. I'm not sure adding 8 more, or at least those 5 more positions, have the evidence to really make that impact. And I'm really curious to see what my colleagues have to say about this topic.
Ms. Shaw.
Thank you. Thank you also, Mr. Helms, for the presentation. I have several questions and some comments also, but I'm going to first start with the questions. Can you tell us about any specific training that's currently in place for our school safety officers to respond to an active shooter situation?
Sure. All of the current school safety supervisors do attend an active shooter response training. This is something very similar to what most law enforcement's practice and follows those same protocols.
Okay, and so is that something that's like an ongoing training, like every year we're going to learn something new or brush up on what we have already learned?
I can't speak necessarily to historically. That's something obviously I am going to be enacting. I think, you know, predecessor, there was a gap. Pandemic, some training went by the wayside. Obviously, we're going to be improving upon that in the future. But yes, that is the goal of this, and that's something I'm going to mandate within the department.
Okay, that's great to hear. Also, you spoke about the emergency managers, and so they're in your department, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and so have the 2 emergency managers assessed each campus individually so that they can give specific information to the people at that site about what to do during an active shooter situation?
So currently what we're doing is we're evaluating and set up a system where every couple years, every school will be evaluated. As at this point, no, not every, to my knowledge. We do ongoing threat assessments, but not necessarily on a routine and following very specific protocols, from my understanding. That is something we're kind of working on. Modeling after some other organizations, basically setting up criteria where every high school will have to be evaluated every 2 years, every middle school every 3 years, and so on and so forth, just because of the sheer number of schools and the dynamics that change within those individual institutions. I can ask Dave, do you know anything? I want to provide you with the best answer. Again, only been in place for 5 months, so.
Okay, thank you.
Have anything to add to that other than we have people within the Department of School Safety that are trained by FEMA to provide training to others on how to respond to active shooter. So basically we have site assessments. Oh, the site assessments? Yeah. Regarding site assessments, we have the emergency managers that go out, and they're the ones that check to make sure that each of the sites have an updated plan and that they know how to respond. And that's why we have drills set aside for, time set aside for people to go ahead and do drills to make sure that they know exactly what to do. And we have a way for them to evaluate them. We have evaluation forms set aside to make sure that they know what they're doing.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and if it's not already like an ongoing part of training, I think it should be. And in regards to the 5 new school safety supervisors, I'm wondering if those, the 5 new ones, will be the ones that are embedded in the high schools, or are you going to have like the veteran school safety supervisors be the ones, because to get a new employee and then to put them in the situation. That doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, no, great question. The testing process, or we would evaluate all the officers we currently have in place, some of the nighttime and weekend individuals that provide that coverage. But, you know, we're going to have very high criteria for these individuals, and if they don't necessarily meet the criteria, then we'll look outside as well. So, you know, we're very fortunate in that we have very experienced individuals that people come to us that come work for school safety or have an immense amount of experience usually. So again, we'll kind of evaluate everybody individually. It would obviously be the current 5 that we have in place, and then supplement with the 5 addition to make sure we have 1 per high school.
Okay, yeah. Okay, well, thank you for answering my questions. I feel that, you know, well, I'm actually surprised that there was not that many, you know, school safety officers that specifically work for security. So we have a lot of schools, you know what I mean, and there's a lot of people to protect, and so I'm comfortable moving this item.
Okay, thank you. I'll second for sake of discussion. Ms. Luna Rose.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Helms. I really appreciate your presentation. It was very thorough. You know, the last thing I expected when I ran for school board that I'd be having this discussion on the dais, and all 5 of us have children in our schools. And so, I can remember, I can recall an incident where when my daughter was attending school, somebody across the street shot a gun, and the kids were on the playground, and everybody ran inside, and then there was calls to the parents, and I think my daughter was in 5th grade at the time, and came home, and she was, I mean, we had gotten the call, of course, but then when she talked about it later, how the kids were crying, and there was teachers who were trying not to cry because it was an obvious gunshot. And this is in Midtown, school's just right down the street from here. So I appreciate the work of school safety because they were there very quickly. But my question is, you know, like a school like Sewell, as I was thinking about it, you know, it's off of 5th. There's not really, there kind of was there was a crossing guard, but it's such a small space to cross. I see, you know, the number of crossing guards we have. My question for you is, like, during this training, are you teaching them also to be like the eyes and ears, you know, of what's going on in the community? Because I believe when that gunshot happened, so this was, for reference, this was probably about like 4 years ago, there was no crossing guard because it was during lunch. So are we, if we were to go forward with this sort of plan, and I'll get back to the school safety supervisors in a second, would this also, I know there's no increase in crossing guards, but a definite increase in more training for them, you know, can they stick around a little bit more? I don't know how we remedy that.
Yeah, you know, yes, to answer your question. That's the whole intent of this. Again, to Dr. Trujillo's point, the intent, again, is to not put more people with guns in schools. The intent is to provide more training. Unfortunately, there's a bridge that we have to build, you know, whether it be providing that additional training or hardening the targets of schools themselves and going through facilities and capital improvements that need to be completed within them. These are all absolute items that are part of the whole package. Unfortunately, this will hopefully kind of bridge, the proposal is to kind of bridge that. Hopefully we could, you know, scale back at some point, who knows, but this was, you know, and to Dr. Robbie's point, you know, is this a visceral, immediate, knee-jerk response? And it's not to this specific situation. This proposal was presented prior to Uvalde and some of these other significant situations that have occurred recently. This is just an evaluation of how we can provide better services to our schools for school safety and, again, be more of that resource. So I think, you know, it's all part of an ongoing process. Which includes school safety and having those personnel within the schools, but also evaluating all the capital improvements that we can do going forward as well.
Okay, so like...
And training for everybody involved.
Sure, so like there's a church across the street from Sewell that if you drive by, you really wouldn't know there's a church unless you were going there. So when you're saying these school safety supervisors, they would be going into the community in places like that, like you would be making more of a connection to the surrounding.
Absolutely. Those are strategic partners that we need, and that's something we already asked them to do. Unfortunately, they don't have a lot of time to deal with that. When we have situations arise in schools, we try to get the neighborhood involved, whether it be ongoing break-ins, ongoing fights after school, other things. I already asked that both emergency managers and the school safety officers associated with those schools do neighborhood work, whether it be sharing information about ongoing situations or just asking people to be eyes and ears for the neighborhood. So not only are we asking for, our school monitors and our school's crossing guards to be those eyes and ears for the school, we're asking the entire neighborhood. And that's why it's so important to have those individuals assigned to that school and those feeder schools so they can be part of that entire community and have the time to invest in the community and become a member of it.
Okay. And then my last question for you, for these 5 extra supervisors, I understand Dr. Ravi's point, and I do agree with it, but I also agree with Ms. Shaw. We have a huge district, and we're very spread out. So can you speak to what kind of relationship, I know we have a relationship with Tucson Police Department, but with these extra 5 supervisors, would that go a long way with working with the police department?
Yeah, absolutely. As you know, the police department is spread into different districts. You have different beats associated with those specific schools. This would allow those officers to become more, build those relationships with those officers that are assigned to those areas as well. Losing initially the school resource officers was a problem because that fractured that relationship a little bit, and especially when it comes to communication. And that's really what we're trying to improve upon within our law enforcement partners, is improving that communication aspect. So having those individuals that can be dedicated to those specific areas and areas of responsibility, just like the police department does, and building those relationships with those individuals, whether it be the beat officer all the way up to the precinct captain, would be hugely beneficial.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet.
Dr. Ravi.
Thank you, President Grijalva. Actually, I want to ask my colleague, Ms. Shaw, you've been the most adamantly against school resource officers and other programs on our campuses. So I'm really surprised that you're supporting this proposal. Can I just hear from you more about your rationale and why are you getting behind this proposal tonight?
Yeah, thank you for asking that, because I know people are thinking that same very thing. But why I am so in favor of school safety officers is because they're under our control. They are under our control, and we can tell them how to interact with our students, what to do, what to carry, and assess what their job, how they do it. If they do something wrong, well, let's address that too. And so that's why I'm more in favor of our school safety officers as opposed to our school resource officers, which are around at certain schools. We didn't get rid of them. They actually got rid of themselves because of budgeting. But I do, I think that's one of a huge draw for our district is that we have armed security. And in this state, with violence happening everywhere, I think, honestly, I'm happy for them to be here because, how are you going to combat an active shooter without someone who is armed? And so I understand that, our school safety officers need more training. They need ongoing training. They're not perfect. But, with good leadership and ongoing training and, assessments and accountability, I think that, we could get them to be, perfect. And I'm sure that they will, if there's a situation, God forbid there is, that they would be courageous enough to take care of it.
Yes.
If I can speak to that point, Dr. Ravi, to your question, because I think it brings up a very important distinction, is in law enforcement, you're enforcing laws. School safety officers are providing safety, and we're providing safety training, we're providing a safety presence. That's, I think, the differentiation. So I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth. I just think it's important to make that note. Again, police officers, their job is to enforce federal, state, local laws. That is not our role. We don't do any enforcement. We support administrators who do have to enforce governing board policies and school rules. We will support them as necessary, but that's not our role. Our role is to evaluate the schools and make them as safe as possible.
I have a question. So if this item is approved, will you have more staff to be able to do those individual school site safety assessments in a more timely manner?
Yeah, so the idea as well is basically the current emergency managers are going to train the school safety officers to do those site assessments for their individual schools. They will become the local experts on school safety, including do those threat vulnerability assessments. I've already been in discussions with some of the resources in FEMA and some of the larger agencies that are going to be inviting us to basically provide that training to our school safety officers on how to conduct a proper threat vulnerability assessment.
Because I think that we have some principals and school staff that are doing things individually on campuses that sound good. I mean, and I know that the staff that they're trying to take care of appreciate it. So when you have, we have some that are putting tint, that reflective tint, so you can look out, but people can't look in, on every window that people can see in. We have schools that lock their individual doors. We have some schools that are set up to have sort of like a lobby, if you will, where you walk in the door and then you sort of have to be cleared to go to the next space. But then we have other schools that you walk in the door and you have open access to wherever you want to go. So I think when I was talking with Dr. Trujillo about this specific item, what I would really like to see is the ability for us to be able to come forward with individualized plans for individual schools based on where they are. And so, you have a school, some of our newer schools like McCorkle, their office is pretty self-contained. They can lock those doors, they have keyless entries, and then you have other schools like Carrillo, which I love, but you walk in, you're buzzed in, and I think they do a pretty good job of verifying why you're there. But it's, once you're on campus, you're on campus. Making sure that all the doors are locked. Those are things that I know our parents and our students and our staff want to know is going to be consistently applied. And right now, when we're driving around campuses, we see propped open doors because, it's summer. And we're not thinking about all of the little details and some of this stuff that would be consistent, that would be training that went across our district. I think that's going to be really beneficial to making sure that people understand that we just have to always sort of be paying attention and be vigilant. It doesn't mean that we want our students or staff to be afraid. It's just we want to make sure that everyone feels safe and comfortable to be able to do what they're coming to our campuses to do, which is to teach and learn. And so I'm not really sure where our board is at this point. We have a motion and a second. I'm sorry? Yes, she is. And so I'm just sort of, I don't know. I think you provided a really good overview. I really do appreciate your organizational breakdown because I've always asked, what does everyone do? I ask all the time, by the way. And this would actually be a departure for me as well because I usually, I'm not in favor of increases. No offense, but I'm not in favor of increasing here when we have a lot of demands everywhere else. But I do want to make sure that our students and staff feel just a little bit safer if we can provide that to them. So I'm going to, if there isn't, I think everyone's asked questions, I'm going to go ahead and ask for a roll call vote and see where we are.
Ms. Shaw?
Yes.
Ms. Counts?
No.
Ms. Luna Rose?
Yes.
Dr. Ravi?
I'm going to vote no tonight, and I don't want my no to all be about not supporting our school safety officers, but I think there's a really comprehensive look that we need to do. And again, I really appreciate Ms. Shaw and your perspective and what you're saying on this front. But again, that visceral thing of like, having a person with a gun is gonna help when there's a shooter. Like the evidence isn't supporting that, and I think we need to take a more comprehensive look. So I want to vote no tonight.
I appreciate that, Dr. Ravi. I'm going to vote yes. And what I'm hoping that we get from this is a real detailed plan on what it is that these additional people are going to allow the department to do. Like, how are we providing? It's 8 people. So what capacity are we going to be able to add to the department in order to make sure that we all feel better as parents and our kids feel better and the people that are doing an amazing job on every campus feel a little safer. That's the goal. So item passes 3-2 with Dr. Ravi and Ms. Counts voting no. Thank you for the presentation. I think across the board we all appreciated the presentation. Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, do we want to take a 5-minute break or just power through? Okay, well, that's that then. All right, item 6.13, approval of fiscal year 2022-23 TUSD proposed annual expenditure budget. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, President Grijalva, Governing Board, I'd like to welcome our new Chief Financial Officer, Ricky Hernandez, to do the honors tonight. This is the proposed budget for fiscal year 23.
Thank you. Good evening.
Welcome to your first board meeting.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
It's nice to be here. It's nice to be back. Feels like home. But today, good evening, President Grijalva, members of the board. Today I'm here to provide you an overview on our fiscal year 23 proposed budget. A lot of what you will see this evening is information that is familiar to you, I hope, but I certainly welcome any questions that you may have at the end. So with the first slide, these are some of the items that we're just going to go over this evening. The most notable item that I want to show you, this is probably something that you've seen previously in Ms. Weatherless's presentation, is the lack of a budget book. This is going to be available in the adopted version. This is just kind of my freshman experience with the budget book, so I am still working on building that for you, but you will have that for your adopted version in July. So just to go over as a reminder of our deadlines, what we're required to follow for our budgeting process. These are our typical deadlines. We are coming at you today before our July 5th proposed budget deadline that is set out in statute. One deadline that is not here is the potential revision of a budget in September. We will probably need to come back to you at mid-September to update our budget limits once the legislature can kind of cobble together and pull themselves together to get a budget approved for the entire state. Otherwise, everything else that you see here through May 15th of next year is our time frame for our budget, our annual financial report, and any revisions that we need to come to you. I'm trying to make it go. There it goes. All right, so some of our budget status and assumptions, as I mentioned before, the legislature has not been able to put together a budget package that has garnered sufficient support within each of the chambers. So, we will need to come back to you again, like I mentioned, in mid-September to get something that reflects what the legislature adopted. One assumption that we do know, which was part of the legislature's baseline budget proposal and the governor's budget, was an inflationary increase of 2% to our base support level, which is what you see in the third bullet point. It's just shy of $88. It is an increase to the base support level that we're expecting in fiscal year 23. Some budget factors that are also incorporated is the per pupil limit for the classroom site fund, which is the Proposition 301. There is a reduction of $25 from last year. Our enrollment continues to remain flat from the fiscal year. And our teacher experience index does have a slight increase of 0.3%, which shows we continue to retain experienced teachers in our schools. There's a lot of info on this one, but essentially I wanted to show you what average daily membership incorporated into this year's proposed budget versus what you saw a year ago. What it looks like from our in-person enrollment, our online students, and depending on grade bands. There are a lot of figures that are, that have remained very similar. Like I mentioned, our enrollment for the most part, and therefore our ADM remains flat. I did put a reminder that Renee had shared with you last year that there is a difference between enrollment and average daily membership. This is not our enrollment. These are our ADM numbers that are used to calculate our budget limits. Our enrollment is obviously a little bit higher than this. So just a reminder on what that reflects. So what are our budget limits year over year? So here's the meat of what we're looking at in our two large funding buckets, M&O and unrestricted capital. This provides you a side-by-side view of what was approved in the May revision from fiscal year 22, so what you just saw last month, and what is currently being proposed for next fiscal years. You'll see some variances that provide you additional information. Some notable ones in there, though, is our base support level has an increase that reflects a 2% inflation, an increase in our teacher experience index that I showed you in the prior slide. The DSEG change that you see on M&O and unrestricted capital is just a shift of expenses from one fund to another, so therefore you see the same amount moving out of one and into another. Our budget balance carry forward is still an estimate at this point, about $24 million. We'll have a better sense of where we land once we get to the end of the fiscal year and we close up over the next 60 days, as well as our capital outlay carry forward, about $22 million as well. We'll have a better sense, but we're expecting that we're going to land around those numbers, so those are currently the estimates that we're using as part of the development for fiscal year 23. What are some of the budget outcomes that we're looking at within this presentation? You know, we obviously want to focus on salary adjustments, wages. Those are the largest part. The board has already addressed those in prior months. We certainly need to continue to have a focus around wages for faculty and staff in fiscal year 23. Planning for a post-ESSER world, you know, knowing that we have items and staff that we've depended on ESSER to fund, and what are those going to be those priorities moving forward. And financially planning to help the district achieve ending its court supervision of DSEG and making sure that we're making the right investments to meet that outcome. Also, we want to make sure that we keep an eye on ensuring that we meet the board's policy on the 1% carry forward requirement, not just because it's your policy, but because it's good financial practice to make sure that we can show that we can keep a nice nest egg, if you will, that allows us to show the solvency of the district. We also want to make sure that we provide an ongoing commitment towards increasing investments in the classroom as defined by the Auditor General. So what are some of the priorities, just as a reminder of what this board and this administration has already done? Dr. Trujillo has mentioned these in the past, but I'm not going to go over the entire listing. There's just shy about $12 million in approved priorities that have come before you over the course of the last several months. And these are all incorporated within this fiscal year 23 proposal. So we want to make sure that that I provide you kind of what we're looking at, what we're asking for, and what you've already done. What are some of the priorities in Prop 301? There aren't significant changes in investment other than there was an additional investment in fine arts teachers, is my understanding. One item of note that I want to make sure that everybody knows is that our beginning fund balance continues to be an estimate. We will be making some additional payments later this week. So this fund balance will be a little bit more clear as we get closer to the end of the month. But all in all, this is consistent with what you've seen in the past and what are the outlays in Proposition 301 or the Classroom Site Fund. I always say to people like pie, so pie charts it is. You've seen this before. And this is our proposed classroom spending. So this chart is definitely very tentative. Because this is where we've allocated dollars, but we're measured on where we actually spend dollars. So this is only a preliminary measure, but it's definitely an important one that we want to make sure that we show you. In the most recent monthly update that you got in the month of May from Renee, the instructional spending was at about 55%. You can see in this one, we're going up to about 57%. Now, in some people's minds, a 2% shift equates to something small. When you break it down into dollars, we're actually talking about over $10 million in investments in instruction alone. 3/4 of our budget proposed for next year will be there to support our classrooms through instruction, student support services, and instructional support services of our teachers. And finally, property taxes. These are the reality of how we fund our schools in TUSD. These are the rates that we've preliminarily looked at. Again, depending on where the state legislature decides that they want to land their budget, we'll have a better sense and we'll know more about how these tax rates will develop. We still have a little bit of time. You'll see there's a breakdown of the primary and the secondary rate, just kind of what everything makes up there. Like I said, we'll continue to work on these property tax rates with the county. We will be issuing a truth in taxation notice for the adjacent ways levy. It is just a statutory requirement. Even though our adjacent ways rate will decrease this year from last year, it is just a requirement that we publish a truth in taxation notice to our taxpayers. With that, I will answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Questions, board members?
I have a question.
Yes, Ms. Luna-Rose.
Mr. Hernandez, nice to
Yes.
see you.
Nice to see you too.
Okay, looking at the property tax rates, because who doesn't love looking at that? Is there, I know you just said you were sending, the district's going to be sending out the truth in taxation. Is there something in that that also can explain, because you do such a good job explaining what the primary and secondary rate is? Because, I mean, I understand it, but that took me a really long time.
Right.
Is that something that we can get the public to understand what exactly that means?
Well, I'll answer that in two parts. One, the truth in taxation notice that's going out in the newspapers in the next couple of weeks will only address the adjacent ways piece. It's a very specific set of language that we have to publish around adjacent ways. The rest of the rate, I know that we publish information as a school district in regards to our tax rate, what makes that up, what do we do with that. It's a very technical formula. I know the county treasurer does a very good job of putting information together around what our primary and our secondary rates are. But there really isn't a hard and fast way of doing it. We can certainly publish more information on the TUSD website, on our finance website, to at least provide a little bit more ample explanation as to what these are, where they're comprised from, and what do they do. We can certainly put something like that together if that would be helpful for the public.
I think it would, personally, just because, like I said, I think when I started, before I was on the board and I was on the Tucson Unified Public Parent Advocacy Council, you know, we talked a lot about primary and secondary rate and how to get an education on what that means. So, and I was a very active parent, but for the parent who doesn't know but wants to learn, I think it would just be nice to have that information.
Sure, we can make that available.
Thank you.
Any other questions, board members? Okay, thank you very much. This is an action item, and so I'll go ahead and move the item.
I'll second.
Thank you. I have a motion, a second from Dr. Ravi. Any additional discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Item passes unanimously 4-0.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, Ms. Counts had to drop off, but she got through the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I did want to explain, Ms. Counts isn't feeling well, so she is home. Okay. So 7.1, approval for use of TUSD and cooperative contracts for online supplemental curriculum materials, renewal support services for fiscal year 22-23. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, I'd like to go ahead and welcome our curriculum and instruction team, as well as our purchasing agent, to talk about a very, very important item, all the important instructional software and the yearly renewal. Ms. Aranda?
Good evening.
Good evening.
President Grijalva, board members, Dr. Trujillo, and Council Ross. Tonight, I will be sharing expenditures and purchases for K-12 curriculum for the 22-23 school year. Although not all of these purchases require your approval tonight, we are showing the full picture of purchases for curriculum. Tonight, we will be discussing the importance of digital tools and platforms, as prior to the pandemic, this area of curriculum was very limited. I will share what funding sources we are using for the 22-23 school year and share usage data and breadth of some of the platforms. Prior to the pandemic and becoming a one-to-one district, our use of digital platforms was very limited. During the first year of the pandemic, publishing companies provided school districts with free access to their products. We used this time to try various platforms and vet which ones fit with our priorities and needs in TUSD. These digital resources have become essential tools for teaching and learning. Some of the benefits are that they increase student engagement. Oh, I'm supposed to be, there we go. I'm not used to a clicker in board meetings anymore. They increase student engagement. They support robust lessons, so teachers now have additional tools and resources to enhance their instruction and enhance the use of small group strategies. They offer personalized learning and facilitate that learning. Most importantly, they develop 21st century skills supporting our one-to-one initiative. And these resources are available outside of school hours. So when a student is at home and they have access to their technology that we provide, they also have access to these digital platforms at all times. I know as a grandmother, I have often put my granddaughter on some of these platforms. As you can see, there are different types of platforms. Many of these platforms provide content for Tier 1, 2, and 3 instruction or intervention. Several of these address curriculum gaps, especially in grades 6-12, as adoptions in these grades are quite outdated. Some are used for functional uses, such as our learning management system, Canvas, which connects teachers and students online to share curriculum, assignments, materials, and communicate and track student learning. And some platforms are used for assessment purposes, such as our M-Class Dibbles platform. Here we see all of the curriculum platforms and their funding sources. Some of these platforms are required platforms. For example, ADE requires K-3 reading intervention programs. They provide us a list of approved programs that we can select from. Currently, we use Imagine Language and Literacy, Waterford, and Res Plus for this purpose and requirement. So we're going to take a minute just to look at some key metrics to give you an idea of how these are used and by how many of our students. So we're going to look at Imagine Language and Literacy, IXL, and Benchmark Advance. As you can see, they're licensed to different amounts of schools. So Imagine Language and Literacy is used in 63 of our schools, IXL is used in all of our schools, and Benchmark Advance is used in 65 of our schools. You can see also the amount of students that are using the platform actively, 16,900 for Imagine Language and Literacy, over 36,000 students in IXL, and 19,600 for Benchmark Advance. The next piece of data you can look at on this graph is the amount of student logins. So you can see we have had 1.8 million student logins to IXL this school year. On this graph, this provides us some additional details. Of course, the number of schools. These are our 5 platforms that impact the most amount of students. Some of the platforms are used for very specific reasons, like high school PE. So they're not reaching as many students. But these are our top platforms. You'll see on the blue graph, you can see how many active licenses are being used compared to how many licenses we have. And that really is representative for different reasons. For example, IXL, we see that our kindergarten students as well as our seniors, we see lower use in those grades. Developmentally in kindergarten is the reason why there's low use. And then in seniors, it's not as applicable to their educational track at that time. And then on the bottom right, you can see those logins. You see that 1.8 million that we talked about for IXL. So one of the things you may be wondering is how will we sustain these types of purchases? Like I explained earlier in the presentation, when the pandemic started, we were able to use some of these platforms for free. What we did after that free time period, we gathered data from the platforms and the data we got off of our Clever platform, and then we did surveys of teachers. And from that data, we whittled down. We determined really what our teachers were going to be used and how they saw that helpful for student learning. Once again, we're going to be investing in that process. We're going to take this year to really look at these different areas. We're going to look at the impact on student learning. We'll look at the data provided by platforms. We'll do some of our own internal statistical assessment. And then we'll send some surveys out to teachers and students to get their perspective on, for the teacher's perspective on how do they feel this platform has impacted student learning. We'll get that information from students as well. And then we'll look at teacher usage and positive feedback through data and surveys, student usage and positive feedback. We have to look at cost and sustainability of the use of these platforms, as we'll be working with a different budget allocation for the 23-24 school year. And then we always really do examine the level of customer service and vendor support we get from these different companies, because that impacts the usage from students and teachers. I think for time's sake, we could probably cut the video, but we have a... Would you like to? We did cut it down to 2 minutes, so not all 4 minutes.
I think it's fine.
Okay. So we'll take that out, but I'll give you a link so you can watch it at your leisure. But we did really, this video is really a testimony from our students and teachers, administrators, that the impact of having a tool like IXL has in their school. With that, do you have any questions?
Any questions, board members? Dr. Ravi.
Thank you, President Grijalva, and thanks for starting to address some of the, of course, my big question is how we're going to pay for all this down the road after ESSER is gone. And you kind of alluded to this, but 65% of this allocation is coming from ESSER, including like the 100% of the IXL budget, which is the one you cite most often and one that seems to be most used. Are we anticipating that in the future budgets that more of this can be pushed into M&O? Are we going to be able to limit this to, $4 million out of the $10 million that are coming from more permanent sources of funding? Like, what do you anticipate in terms of what we need to anticipate and what Ricky needs to anticipate, going forward, and our team needs to anticipate in terms of like how we're going to be paying for this down the road?
Yeah, I would anticipate that we are going to have a greatly reduced budget, at least when ESSER is gone. We'll probably have half of that or less. And so we'll need to make some decisions. For example, in our K-3 literacy, which takes quite a chunk, looking at cost analysis, sustainability, so maybe selecting some programs that are more cost effective out of the list that we get from ADE. I know we recently had to do that for our dyslexia initiative. We had a list from ADE, and that was one of our major decision makers as well, is looking at the cost of the different options.
Okay, any other questions? Ms. Shaw.
Thank you for the presentation. Just wondering if you can clarify, because I'm looking at the board docs, and are we approving just those those six programs, or is it the list that you showed up where there's like 30 different ones? Are we approving that list, or is it the one that you have outlined on board docs? I think it's slide 5.
Yeah, I'll let Diana address it.
Good evening, again. The list that we have provided on the board docs are those items that are $250,000 or more for those specific programs. The other programs are less than that amount for the fiscal year 22-23, and those are included on their the budget for next year. And that's why we break it out. Those that were on the major list, these are the ones that are just $250,000 or more that we need your specific approval for.
Okay. And then then you had a slide that said, I guess for the future, like the approval or the platform selection process. So that's going to happen like after the ESSER funds are dried up, and then we have to assess, right?
We're going to take this year to do that.
Okay.
So the teachers have had a couple years now. We've really been monitoring the usage. Last year, we did a big push on professional development on the different platforms in our 4 PD days. So now with all of that, we'll really take this school year to get feedback from teachers and students and make those tough decisions, really.
Really hard ones, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
I do
Go
want to
ahead.
say one last thing.
Yes.
It really has been great to have these at this time, because the level of need of our students during the pandemic and in these last 2 years, these have been essential. And this third year of having this full suite, I think will allow us, that opportunity to say, okay, now what can we not live without?
Yeah. And I mean, I haven't on the receiving, like the other side of the tears from IXL, just because, when you don't get it, it's super frustrating. You're like almost there, and then
if you
miss
ever
one,
watch
and you have to go back and start again. It's frustrating, but I do think that it's been really helpful in differentiating, like showing students how to be able to sort of come up with the answers on their own. It did force my kids to start looking at videos on, what other things
Khan
that are
Academy.
available, Khan Academy and all these that I just never want to learn again. But it's been frustrating for me because, it's helpful and frustrating because it really did teach me how I can better support my child, because these are all things that I have thankfully forgotten since, algebra and geometry, and now I had to relearn all over again. So thank you, IXL. But I do think that I'm glad that you're going to go through a needs assessment, because we're going to have to figure out what's affordable and what isn't. But for today, the funding is there, and so I'll go ahead and move approval.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second by Dr. Ravi. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes unanimously. And I do think that it's great that you had the data to show who's accessing it, because I think that was really helpful. Thank you. Okay, we're also voting online. All right, now we have 7.2, Emergency Connectivity Fund, ECF Award for Student Homework Gap to purchase wireless hotspots for students. Dr. Trujillo.
All the board members, in a night of increasing rates and surcharges, good news, we've got a grant, and here to talk to us about $1 million additional dollars coming in through the Emergency Connectivity Fund our Executive Director for ITS, Robbie Hamadi.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo, President Grijalva, members of the board. This is the Emergency Connectivity Fund, also known as ECF, and it's a grant that Tucson Unified received to provide wireless hotspots for our students. Let me just give you a quick overview of the ECF. It's a $7 billion program provided by the FCC, the Federal Communication Commission, and is administered by the Universal Service Administrative Company. The ECF is pretty much designed to help schools and libraries with connectivity tools and services needed for remote learning and closing the homework gap during the COVID-19 pandemic. Tucson Unified received a little bit more than $1,100,000 to provide T-Mobile wireless hotspots for students. Those funds are available until June 30th, 2023. And those hotspots will be available for students, of course, to use at home if they do not have an internet connectivity. Those hotspots are also filtered for educational applications, meaning you can only use the software and apps that are provided by TUSD. And also, the one catch is that TUSD may pay for inactive devices. And what that means is if we purchase, for example, by the way, this amount of money will give us about 4,500 additional hotspots. So assuming we get the full amount, and let's say 100 are not being used, then we're accountable for that as a district, because we have to make sure that all of them are being used. But that's something that the Technology Services Department at TUSD will administer, working with T-Mobile. The good news is also, other than receiving the funds, is that there is no budget for TUSD. The internet service provider, T-Mobile in this case, will be paid directly by the ECF. So with that, the request is for the governing board to approve the receipt of this grant by the ECF. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
It's a grant. We're very excited. I'll move approval.
I'll second.
We have more than one wants a second. Dr. Robbie seconds. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes unanimously.
All right.
Thank you
very
so
much.
All right. One more item. 7.3, proposed modification to employee benefits plan. Dr. Trujillo.
Yeah, President Grijalva, members of the board, I'd like to welcome our Executive Director for HR, Renee Heuser, and briefly take us through a recommendation to lift an area of coverage that's currently excluded. Ms. Heuser?
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. President Grijalva, members of the board. At our last meeting, I came and let you know that the Employee Benefits Trust Board was going to have one additional meeting this year, a special meeting, to address an issue around some exclusionary language on gender-affirming care. That meeting did occur on June the 6th, and they made a recommendation for us to bring forward to you tonight. At that meeting, we had CBiz, who is our benefits consultant this year, and UMR, who is our health carrier this year. They both brought forward some information, some proposed language, and tonight I have Oscar Diaz, who is the Vice President at CBiz. There's Oscar joining us virtually. And Oscar's going to go through the presentation that was given to the Employee Benefits Trust Board, briefly cover the recommendations, touch a little bit on the projected costs to the plan, and then we'll let you know what the recommendation was from the EBT. Oscar, I give it over to you.
Thank you, Mrs. Heuser. President Grijalva, Mr. Trujillo, and members of the governing board. I believe you have the slide presentation there. I have a printed copy on my side. So basically, we're just going to cover how the coverage is broken down and the potential cost to the district. So the coverage can be broken down into 4 parts. They are mental health benefits, medical office visits and lab work, surgery that can be provided, and then additional pharmacy benefits that can be provided, including hormone replacement therapy. Under the plan, under the current TUSD benefits program, all of these benefits except for the pharmacy are excluded. So there is no mental health coverage, there is no office visit coverage, there are no surgeries covered. The pharmacy benefits are covered at this point. When we went out, we were asked to provide some comparisons to other school districts and other employers in the county. And one of our clients, Pima County, and another one, large school district in the area, which is a client of CBIZ, has no exclusions. And then the ASBATE Public Sector Trust is implementing coverage beginning July 1st. So these entities are already there. And so if, based on the recommendation, the governing board wants to approve the coverage, what we're going to see is that we're really not able to assess what the actual spend is, since there is no coverage now. So the past spend doesn't take into account utilization because it's vastly unknown. However, when we did speak to UMR and we did some investigation with our own actuaries, we found that the cost can range anywhere from about $150,000 to $500,000 per person, and that can take 1 to 3 years, and that can actually even take longer if a person wants to have the gender assignment surgery. So what you'd be looking at is anywhere from $150,000 to $500,000 per person, depending on the lengths of gender reassignment that they take. When our actuaries took this into account, they figured that the potential cost impact from a percentage standpoint to the district would be between 1% and 2%. And based on Tucson Unified School District's current 2022 medical claim cost projection, we'd be looking at anywhere from $230,000 to about $460,000 annually. Again, it's a best guess, not knowing what percentage of the population might be seeking this. But we think a conservative number would be on the lower end as opposed to the higher end. So we presented this data to the Employee Benefits Trust, and the Employee Benefits Trust did make a motion. However, they did not make a motion based on the recommended benefits that were recommended by UMR and what we consider to be the standard level of benefits that are out there. The motion that came about was a motion to recommend to the governing board that it eliminates the exclusion for gender affirming or gender dysphoria treatment and not accept the UMR recommended language regarding written psychological assessments as presented effective July 1st, 2022, and with no increase in premium. So the EBT does make a recommendation to add it. However, they have asked to remove that recommended language. The recommended language that is the norm does ask for an assessment by 2 professionals, two psychological professionals, and the treatment that was recommended in its entirety is a guidance that's based on the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. That's their standards. So we're putting forth to you this recommendation from the EBT, and I believe Ms. Hauser was going to discuss a little further about the actual motion and possibly making a change to it. I would ask at this point if there's any specific questions regarding the recommendation, and if Ms. Heiser wants to chime in as far as the potential change to the recommendation.
Any questions? Dr. Ravi.
First of all, I want to thank all the team members who worked on this. This first came to our attention a few months ago from some of our staff who were transgender and being denied coverage because of the exclusions. And this first came to my attention earlier this spring, and I'm really thrilled that our district was able to move forward so quickly in addressing this for our trans employees to make sure that they knew that they were valued members of our TUSD community. And thanks to the EBT for having special meetings to address this and for covering this. And my question is about the recommendation not to accept the psychological assessment language. So I have the WPATH recommendations pulled up, and for criteria for surgeries, they are from the WPATH that you mentioned. For a criteria for all breast, chest, and genital surgeries is documentation of persistent gender dysphoria by a qualified mental health professional. So I was just wondering what the EBT decision was on not accepting that piece of the recommendation.
I can tell you that the next day following the meeting, they went away and they did some research, and the calls came back that they probably should have left that language in. So it was, they felt a little rushed in making the motion to get it here. If you don't adopt the language tonight as part of this motion, they will likely bring the item back when they reconvene in the fall and bring a new recommendation forward that includes the language.
Ms. Grijalva?
Yes, Ms. Luna Rose.
If we do that, does that hinder any, anything for our employees that were, that have, anybody that needed this type of services, let's put it that way?
It shouldn't, because it's very standard language, and it was our understanding that these employees had already started down that path anyway.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll read the language to you from WPATH. It says, essentially, a written psychological assessment from at least 2 qualified behavioral health providers experienced in treating gender dysphoria who have independently assessed the covered person. The assessment must document that the covered person meets all of the following criteria. And the criteria list, the covered person has experienced persistent, well-documented gender dysphoria. The covered person has the capacity to make a fully informed decision and to consent to treatment. The covered person must be 18 years of age or older. If significant medical or mental health concerns are present, they must be reasonably well controlled. The covered person must complete at least 12 months of successful, continuous, full-time, real-life experience in the desired gender, and the covered person must complete 12 months of continuous cross-sex hormone therapy appropriate for the desired gender unless medically contraindicated. So the change in the language really revolved more about of getting 2 qualified behavioral health providers to review the case. And again, as Ms. Heiser mentioned, that after reflecting and doing some research, the EBT decided that they should probably keep the recommended WPATH standards in place.
With the board, considering that this would go into effect July
1st.
July 1. And so our next meeting is right. Okay, so before July 1.
Before
so
July 1.
If we were to postpone a vote in order to let the EBT board meet, are you recommending that, or?
I don't know that we can get that group back together again.
That quickly.
They've kind of all dispersed for the summer.
President
Okay.
Rob, I'm a little confused.
Dr. Robbie.
Right now, we have a recommendation from EBT, but we can, as a governing board, it needs to be approved by us. And so can we not tonight vote to a motion to eliminate the exclusion for gender affirming care for the surgical options and other things that are excluded, and also keep the language that UMR in terms of like following standard of care, and have it be a difference than what the EBT said?
Sure. No, I think we absolutely can. I just didn't know if there would be some resistance on the board because we have this committee and recommendation. If that is not an issue, I would be comfortable adopting the item with the language that.
And I'm comfortable making that motion as a physician who's done a lot of gender affirming care, including referring patient surgery and been using WPATH and other standards to create protocols in clinical practice. I feel comfortable making a motion that we move to recommend the elimination of exclusion for gender affirming care and gender dysphoria treatment in line with the UMI recommendation for psychological assessment.
No, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes unanimously.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you for sticking with us.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right, so our last item is 8.1, future meeting dates and agenda items.
President Grijalva, members of the governing board, we are very, very challenged to secure a quorum for the June 28th meeting. So we would like to formally request that the governing board consider moving the second meeting in June, scheduled for June 28th, to June 21st, which would be a week from this evening. We are also recommending a later start time for executive session to start at 5 o'clock and to enter into the public meeting at 6 o'clock.
Okay. I don't think we can vote on that, but I think you've cleared the calendar with the rest
I've
of
taken the
group,
liberty
or can we? Mr. Ross.
My view, Ms. Grijalva, is that you can, because this is an agendized item to address
Okay.
and possibly change new agenda items in future meetings.
Okay, so I will go ahead, since I was probably one of the board members that was going to have a hard time being here on the 28th. I go ahead and move that we change the June 28th date of our TUSD board meeting to June 21st.
I'll second.
So I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, item passes unanimously. So let's make sure to put those in our calendar. All right, any other? Yes, Ms. Shaw.
Thank you. I would like to add to a future agenda, and preferably the one coming up on the 21st, the possibility of adding Catalina and Santa Rita schools to the FAFSA peer coach programs that we have in collaboration with Arizona Board of Regents. And speaking with Dr. Trujillo, he said that, the criteria is 50% below rate. Right now, we already approved Troya, Pueblo, and Rincon, and I was wondering why we can't do some of the other schools. And so.
Okay. Any other items? And again, remember, you can always send them to Yolanda as well. All right. Well, thank you. It is 9:40. Our meeting is adjourned. Thanks for sticking with us.
Thank you.